The oil lamp flickered in Elder Isaiah's study, casting long shadows across ancient maps and tattered scrolls. Outside, winter winds howled through the valley of Ember Mist, a mournful sound that seemed to echo the fate of the once proud Shadowcrest lineage. Only 43 souls remained where hundreds had thrived mere decades ago. The cinder fever had claimed the rest, leaving behind hollow-eyed survivors and empty homes. Ariana Shadowcrest stood motionless by the hearth, her slender fingers tracing the embroidered wolf on her sleeve, the sigil of her bloodline. At 19, her face still carried youthful softness, but her eyes reflected burdens far beyond her years. The responsibility of being the last true Shadowcrest weighed upon her shoulders like chainmail too heavy for her frame. "Read it again," she said, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. Her grandfather, Elder Isaiah, looked up from the parchment bearing the royal seal of Night Haven. His weathered hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from rage barely contained. "By decree of His Majesty, King Gregor Blackthorn, Alpha of the Northern Territories," Isaiah began, his voice like gravel underfoot, "the settlement of Ember Mist is hereby found in violation of the Silver Accord, having failed to provide tribute for 3 consecutive harvest seasons." The words hung in the air like poison. "We had nothing to give," Ariana whispered fiercely. "The blight took our crops. The fever took our strongest. What were we supposed to offer? Our bones?" Isaiah set the parchment down, his eyes reflecting the firelight like twin flames. "The law doesn't care about our suffering, child. The penalty is dissolution. By the next full moon, Ember Mist ceases to exist. Our lands forfeit, our people scattered." Through the thin walls of their modest home, Ariana could hear the sounds of the village settling into an uneasy night. Children's laughter had become rare as spring flowers in winter. The remaining families huddled together against the cold and against the knowledge that their way of life was ending. "There must be another way," Ariana said, her fingers curling into fists. The silence that followed was answer enough, until a sharp knock broke it. Isaiah rose, his joints protesting, and opened the door to reveal a figure that seemed carved from darkness itself. The man stood tall in polished black armor, a silver wolf emblazoned on his breastplate. His face bore the scars of countless battles, one particularly vicious mark slicing from temple to jaw. When he spoke, his voice carried the chill of mountain snow. "Elder Isaiah, I am Dominic Raventhorn, emissary of His Majesty King Gregor Blackthorn." Isaiah stepped aside, allowing the formidable warrior to enter. Ariana felt herself straighten instinctively, chin lifting in defiance despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Have you come to witness our misery, Lord Raventhorn?" she asked, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. The man's gaze swept over her, assessing rather than leering. "I've come with an alternative to extinction, Lady Shadowcrest." From within his cloak, he withdrew a second document, this one sealed with black wax imprinted with a thorned crown. He placed it on the table with deliberate care. "His Majesty offers a pardon," Raventhorn continued. "Complete forgiveness of all debts and guarantees of Ember Mist's continued sovereignty." Isaiah's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "In exchange for what?" Raventhorn's gaze moved to Ariana, the weight of it making her skin prickle. "The Shadowcrest bloodline carries old magic. His Majesty requires a bride." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock through the room. "Absolutely not!" Isaiah thundered, stepping between Ariana and the emissary. "She is the last of our line, our future. Your future is forfeit already," Raventhorn cut in, his tone matter-of-fact rather than cruel. "This offer is the only path that doesn't end with your people homeless or dead before winter's end." Ariana felt the world narrow to a single point of clarity. "When would this marriage take place?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Both men turned to her, Isaiah with horror, Raventhorn with cold approval. "The king awaits at the Fate Woods," Raventhorn replied. "The ceremony would be at dawn." "Tomorrow?" Isaiah's voice cracked. "This is madness. It's a power play." "It's a chance," Ariana interrupted. "Our only chance." She stepped forward, facing the emissary directly. "Tell me about him. Not the tales told to frighten children, but the truth." Something like respect flickered in Raventhorn's eyes. "King Gregor took the obsidian throne 15 years ago, when he was 20. His father was a tyrant who ruled through fear and blood. Gregor killed him during the Blood Moon ceremony, before every alpha in the Northern Territories." Ariana felt her breath catch. Patricide was the gravest taboo among their kind. "They call him the Winter King," Raventhorn continued, "for his heart is said to be as cold as frost. He has never shown mercy to those who defy him." "Has he killed innocents?" Ariana asked directly. "He has killed those who challenged his rule," Raventhorn answered carefully. 3 rival alphas whose heads still adorn the gates of Crimson Citadel. But under his reign, the common folk have known less suffering than under his father. Ariana moved to the window, gazing out at the village square where her sister Elena played with the few remaining children. At 17, Elena still believed in bedtime stories with happy endings. She deserved a future beyond this dying village. "If I refuse?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Then by law, Embermist falls. Its people become refugees at the mercy of stronger packs." The decision crystallized in her mind like ice forming on a winter pond. Clear, inevitable. "I will go," she said quietly. "Ariana, no!" Isaiah's voice broke with anguish. She turned to face her grandfather, taking his gnarled hands in hers. "You've protected me my whole life. Let me protect you now. Let me protect all of them." "He'll break you," Isaiah whispered, tears tracking through the deep lines of his face. "That man destroys everything he touches." "Maybe," Ariana tried to smile, "or maybe I'll surprise him." That night, unable to sleep, Ariana slipped into the family's small library, pulling ancient tomes from shelves her ancestors had filled over generations. If she was to face the Wolf King, she would do so armed with knowledge. The history spoke of the Blackthorn line as descendants of the first wolves, beings of immense power who walked the earth before humans learned to fear the dark. They ruled through strength and terror, taking what they wanted and crushing those who opposed them. But as dawn approached, Ariana found something else, a worn journal belonging to her grandmother. The pages spoke of an ancient alliance between the Shadowcrest and Blackthorn families, a marriage contract 7 generations past that had ended in tragedy when the Shadowcrest bride died mysteriously. And with her death, the natural magic of the Shadowcrests, once healers and protectors, had begun to fade from the bloodline. Could this be why King Gregor sought a Shadowcrest bride? Was he searching for something lost to time? The candle had burned low when Elena found her, half asleep among the books. "You're really going to do it," her sister said, voice small in the pre-dawn darkness. "I must," Ariana answered, gathering Elena into her arms. "You'll help grandfather. You'll remember that whatever happens to me, it was my choice." Elena's fingers dug into her back. "You're the bravest person I know." "I'm the most terrified person you know," Ariana corrected with a sad smile. "I'm just good at hiding it." They sat together as the sky outside lightened from black to indigo, and Ariana tried to memorize everything. The familiar scent of pine and herbs that permeated their home, the sound of Elena's breathing, the feel of her sister's hand in hers. By sunrise, all of this would be memory. Dressed in the traditional garb of an unmated female, a simple gown of forest green with silver embroidery at the hem, Ariana prepared for her journey. She braided her dark hair in the ritual style, weaving in sprigs of nightshade as was customary for a bride meeting her intended. Around her throat, she fastened a silver pendant passed down through generations of Shadowcrest women. As a final act of defiance or perhaps self-preservation, she slipped her grandmother's journal and a small silver dagger into the folds of her cloak. If she was to be sacrificed, she would not go entirely unprepared. Isaiah insisted on accompanying her, along with 6 of their strongest remaining hunters as witnesses. They traveled in tense silence through the pre-dawn darkness, following the ancient path to the Fate Woods. Frost crunched beneath their boots, the cold biting at exposed skin with hungry teeth. The sacred grove appeared suddenly, a clearing where moonlight pooled like liquid silver between towering pines. At its center stood the altar, a massive stone carved with symbols that predated written language. As Ariana approached, she noticed something strange. The ancient markings began to glow with faint blue light, responding to her presence in a way no one had witnessed for generations. And standing before that altar, absolutely motionless, was a figure that made every instinct Ariana possessed scream at her to run. Gregor Blackthorn was taller than any man she had ever seen, his frame powerful in a way that suggested barely contained violence. He wore all black, from his leather boots to the long coat that moved around him like living shadow. His hair was dark as midnight, falling to his shoulders, and even from a distance, Ariana could see the sharp angles of his face, beautiful and cruel as a blade. But it was his stillness that truly frightened her. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge their approach. He simply stood there like a statue carved from darkness itself, radiating a presence that made the air feel heavy and hard to breathe. "Sweet mercy," one of the hunters whispered. "The stories fall short." Lord Raventhorn stepped from the shadows, his smile sharp. "His Majesty awaits his bride. Approach the altar, Ariana Shadowcrest." Ariana's feet felt rooted to the ground. This was her last chance. She could run, could refuse, could condemn her people and flee into the forest. For one wild moment, she actually considered it. Then Gregor Blackthorn's head turned, and his gaze found hers across the clearing. His eyes were silver, not gray or blue-gray, but true metallic silver that caught the moonlight and reflected it back like polished mirrors. They were the eyes of something that had never been entirely human. They pinned her in place with the weight of an apex predator's stare. Ariana couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could only stare into those impossible eyes and feel her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Then he spoke, and his voice was deep and cold and absolutely certain. "Come here, little witch. Let's get this over with." Ariana's legs moved without conscious command, carrying her forward across ground that felt suddenly treacherous. Each step toward the altar was a step away from everything she had ever known, and the man waiting for her looked like he had never known warmth in his entire existence. Up close, Gregor Blackthorn was even more overwhelming. He towered over her by more than a foot, and this near, she could see the small scars that marked his hands, his throat, the sharp line of his jaw. Battle scars, she realized. This wasn't a king who ruled from a throne room. This was a warrior who had carved his kingdom from the bones of his enemies. "You're younger than I expected." His metallic gaze traveled over her face with clinical assessment. "How old?" 19. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Old enough to know what I'm agreeing to. Old enough to save my people from extinction." Something flickered in his expression, too fast for her to read. A muscle twitched in his jaw, but he said nothing more. Lord Raventhorn cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, if we could proceed with the ceremony—" "I'm speaking to my bride." Gregor didn't look away from Ariana, but the temperature in the clearing seemed to drop 10 degrees. Raventhorn went silent immediately. Gregor studied her for another long moment, and Ariana forced herself not to flinch under that penetrating stare. She'd heard that alphas could sense fear, that they fed on it like wolves on wounded prey. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "You're afraid," he said finally, and Ariana's stomach sank. "But you're standing here anyway? Why?" "You know why," she lifted her chin. "Ember Mist falls if I refuse." "Ember Mist is already fallen." His words were brutal in their honesty. "Your village is hanging by a thread. One bad winter, one sickness, one raid, and they're gone regardless of what happens here today. So I'll ask again, why are you really standing here?" Ariana's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Because I won't let them fall alone. Because they're my family, my responsibility." She stopped, surprised by the heat of tears behind her eyes. "Because I'm all they have left." Something in Gregor's expression shifted, just fractionally. He searched her face, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw something almost human flicker in the depths of his silver stare. "Then understand this," he said quietly, his voice pitched for her ears alone. "Once we speak these vows, you belong to me. Not as cattle, not as political leverage, but as my mate in the eyes of every pack, every kingdom, every power that matters. There is no annulment, no divorce, no escape. You'll be queen of Night Haven, and that crown comes with blood on it." "I understand." Ariana met his eyes without wavering. "No!" His hand moved suddenly, catching her chin and tilting her face up to his. His touch was fever-hot against her skin, and Ariana gasped at the sensation. "You don't, but you will." Before she could respond, he released her and turned to face the altar. "Begin the ceremony." Lord Raventhorn stepped forward, unfurling a scroll that glittered with official seals. "By the authority vested in me by the Council of Alphas and witnessed by the representatives of Embermist, I call upon the ancient laws to bind these two souls in sacred union." Ariana barely heard the words. Her chin still burned where Gregor had touched her, a heat that seemed to sink beneath her skin and spread through her blood. "Gregor Blackthorn, Alpha King of Night Haven, do you claim this woman as your mate and queen?" "I do." No hesitation, no emotion, just two words that sealed Ariana's fate. "Ariana Shadowcrest, last daughter of the Embermist bloodline, do you accept this claim and bind yourself to his rule?" This was it, the moment of no return. Ariana opened her mouth, and somewhere behind her, she heard her grandfather make a sound of pure anguish. "I do." The words hung in the air for a heartbeat, and then Gregor's hand shot out, catching her wrist. Before Ariana could react, he'd drawn a small knife from his belt and sliced it across his palm, blood welling dark and red against his skin. "Old blood seals old vows," he said, and slashed the blade across her palm as well. Ariana hissed at the sudden pain, but Gregor was already pressing their bleeding hands together, his fingers lacing through hers with surprising gentleness. The moment their blood mingled, the world exploded into chaos. Power surged between them like lightning, crackling up Ariana's arm and exploding through her chest. She gasped, staggering, but Gregor's grip was iron, holding her upright as magic, ancient, wild, terrifying, roared through her veins. The stone beneath their feet began to tremble. The ancient carvings on the altar blazed with blue fire, responding to whatever was happening between them. Above, the clear night sky suddenly filled with clouds that swirled in unnatural patterns, lightning flashing without thunder. But more shocking than the physical manifestations were the images flooding Ariana's mind. Not images, memories. His memories. Flashes of violence and blood. A throne room lit by guttering torches. A man's face twisted with rage and madness. The weight of a crown settling on dark hair. Silver eyes staring out at an ocean of wolves, all of them bowing, submitting, accepting his dominance. And beneath it all, a loneliness so profound it was like staring into an abyss. Then it was over. Ariana stumbled backward, and Gregor caught her around the waist with his free hand, steadying her. Their palms were still pressed together, blood drying between them, and she could feel his heartbeat through the contact, strong and steady, impossibly fast. "What was that?" she whispered. "The bond." His voice was rough, strained in a way it hadn't been before. "It's done. You're mine now." Lord Raventhorn was staring at them with barely concealed shock. "The blood bond," he breathed. "I've never seen it manifest so strongly. Your Majesty, this is dismissed." Gregor didn't look away from Ariana. "All of you, return to Ashwood and inform the village that their sovereignty has been restored. The bride comes with me now." Elder Isaiah stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Your Majesty, please, let her say goodbye." She said her goodbyes. His gaze finally released Ariana, turning to pin her grandfather in place. "Or did you think I wouldn't know? That I wouldn't smell her tears on the wind, hear her sister's heartbreak from miles away?" He looked back at Ariana. "You're very brave, little witch. Or very foolish. I haven't decided which." The world tilted around her, reality shifting under her feet like quicksand. He had known, had sensed her private moments with Elena, her tears shed in darkness. What else could he sense? Gregor led her away from the altar toward a massive black stallion that pawed the frozen ground impatiently. With effortless strength, he lifted her onto its back, then mounted behind her. Ariana stiffened as his arms came around her to grasp the reins, caging her against his chest. His body radiated unnatural heat in the winter air, and she could feel the hard planes of his muscles against her back. "Relax," he murmured, his breath stirring her hair. "I can feel your fear. It's distracting." "Then perhaps you shouldn't have created a bond that lets you feel my emotions," Ariana shot back. To her shock, she felt, rather than heard his laugh, a quiet rumble in his chest. "Perhaps not, but it's done now. Hold on." The horse launched into motion, and Ariana gasped, grabbing onto Gregor's arm for balance. They raced through the forest at a speed that should have been impossible in the darkness, but the stallion moved with supernatural grace, never faltering, never slowing. Behind them, Fate Woods and everything Ariana had ever known disappeared into shadow. Ahead, the sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn, painting the horizon in shades of blood and gold. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Home," Gregor's voice rumbled against her back. "Crimson Citadel. You'll be safe there." "Safe from what?" His arms tightened fractionally around her. "From everything except me." They rode in silence as the sun rose, and Ariana tried not to think about what awaited her in a fortress called Crimson, ruled by a king called Winter. Tried not to think about the strange heat that pulsed through her veins wherever their bodies touched. Tried not to think about the connection that now bound her to this dangerous, damaged man. Most of all, she tried not to think about the moment their blood had mixed, and she'd felt his loneliness like a physical blow, because something told her that loneliness was the key to understanding Gregor Blackthorn, and whether she wanted to or not, she was going to spend the rest of her life trying to unlock that mystery. The path climbed steadily upward, winding through increasingly rugged terrain. The valley of Embermist fell away behind them, replaced by jagged peaks still capped with early winter snow. The air grew thinner, sharper, carrying the metallic tang of ice and stone. As if sensing her thoughts, Gregor shifted behind her, and his voice came low and dark in her ear. "Whatever you're thinking, little witch, stop. You can't save me. You can't fix me. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for both of us." But Ariana had spent her whole life healing things that others had given up on: injured animals, blighted crops, broken spirits. She said nothing, but as the sun climbed higher and Crimson Citadel appeared on the horizon like a dark crown against the sky, she made a silent vow of her own. She would uncover the truth about the Winter King. She would survive this marriage, and somehow, some way, she would find out what had broken the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories, even if it killed her. Crimson Citadel rose from the mountainside like something carved from nightmare and ambition. Ariana had heard descriptions of the fortress throughout her childhood. Everyone had. But words couldn't capture the sheer scale of it. Black stone walls climbed impossible heights, studded with towers that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. Banners bearing Gregor's sigil, a wolf's head circled by thorns, snapped in the mountain wind. But it was the gates that made Ariana's blood run cold. Massive iron barriers wrought in the shape of bared fangs and mounted above them. "Don't look," Gregor said quietly. But it was too late. 3 heads preserved by some dark art stared down with empty eyes. The alphas who had challenged Gregor's rule, their final moments of terror frozen for eternity. "A reminder," Gregor said as the gates groaned open before them. "Mercy is weakness in this world. I learned that lesson young." Ariana forced herself to look away from the gruesome display as they passed beneath it. The courtyard beyond was chaos. Soldiers training, servants rushing between buildings, wolves in both human and animal form moving with purpose. Every eye turned to them as Gregor's horse clattered across the stones, and Ariana felt the weight of hundreds of stares. "The Alpha King returns!" someone shouted, and within seconds a crowd had gathered. Gregor dismounted in one fluid motion, then reached up to lift Ariana down. His hands spanned her waist easily, and that strange heat flared again where they touched. Their eyes met, and something flickered in his metallic gaze. Recognition, perhaps, of the same sensation she felt. "My people!" Gregor's voice carried across the courtyard with supernatural clarity. "I present Ariana Blackthorn, Queen of Night Haven. Any who show her disrespect answer to me." The crowd fell to their knees as one, heads bowed. Ariana's heart hammered. Queen. She was a queen now, standing before hundreds of wolves who could tear her apart with their bare hands if their king commanded it. "Rise," Gregor ordered. To Ariana, he said quietly, "Come. You need food and rest, and we need to talk." He led her through a maze of corridors, each more opulent than the last. Ariana glimpsed training rooms filled with weapons, libraries with shelves stretching to cathedral ceilings, dining halls that could seat hundreds. This wasn't just a fortress. It was a city unto itself. Finally, they reached a set of carved double doors. Gregor pushed them open to reveal chambers that took Ariana's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the mountains, their peaks still crowned with snow despite the approaching spring. A massive bed dominated one wall, its black silk coverings embroidered with silver thread. Tapestries depicting wolves and moonlight covered the stone walls, and a fireplace large enough to stand in crackled with welcoming warmth. "Your rooms," Gregor said, watching her reaction. "They connect to mine through that door." He gestured to a smaller entrance on the far wall. "You'll need attendants. I'll send Thalia. She's been with my household for decades and knows how things work here." "And what exactly do you expect from me?" Ariana turned to face him, exhaustion making her bold. "Am I supposed to smile and look pretty while you rule? Bear you heirs? What's my purpose here besides being a political pawn?" Gregor's jaw tightened. "You're my mate, my queen. That means—" "It means nothing until you tell me what it means." Ariana moved closer, craning her neck to meet his eyes. "You felt it too, didn't you? When our blood mixed, that connection. What was that?" For the first time since she'd met him, Gregor looked uncertain. He turned away, moving to the windows. The blood bond is ancient magic. It ties mates together, lets them sense each other's emotions, sometimes even share thoughts. It's meant to strengthen the connection between alphas and their chosen partners. "And you didn't think to warn me before cutting my hand open? Would it have changed your answer?" He glanced back at her. "You were always going to say yes for your pack, your family. Don't pretend otherwise." He was right, and Ariana hated him for it. "So now we're connected forever, and I have no say in it." "You had a say." Gregor's voice went cold. "You said I do. Everything else is consequence." Ariana's temper, already frayed by fear and exhaustion, finally snapped. "Then tell me the consequences. Tell me what to expect from a husband who mounts heads on his gates and rules through terror. Tell me." Her voice broke despite her best efforts. "Tell me if I should be afraid of you." The silence that followed was absolute. Gregor stared at her, and Ariana watched emotions flicker across his face too fast to name. Finally, he crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Yes," he said softly. "You should be afraid of me. I've killed men for looking at me wrong. I've destroyed packs for breathing defiance. I am exactly what the stories say, Ariana, a monster wearing a crown." "Then why do I feel safe with you?" The words escaped before Ariana could stop them. Gregor went absolutely still. "What?" "I can feel you." Ariana pressed a hand to her chest, where that strange awareness pulsed like a second heartbeat. "And you're not what you're pretending to be. You're angry, and you're lonely, and you're—" She broke off, shocked by her own boldness. "Careful, little witch." Gregor's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You're reading things that aren't there." "Am I?" Ariana held her ground even as every instinct screamed at her to retreat. "Then prove it. Show me the monster. Make me afraid." It was a challenge no alpha could ignore, and Ariana knew it. His eyes flashed, brightening to something almost luminous. His hand shot out, catching her throat. Not squeezing, just holding, his palm hot against her pulse point. "You want to see the monster?" His voice had gone rough, inhuman. "You want to know what I really am?" Ariana's breath came quick and shallow, but she forced herself not to flinch. "Yes." His eyes blazed brighter, and Ariana gasped as his pupils elongated, becoming distinctly wolfish. His teeth seemed sharper when he spoke. "I'm not just an alpha, Ariana. I'm something older, something that shouldn't exist. My father was a monster, and his father before him. And the curse runs in our blood like poison." "What curse?" Ariana whispered. The kings of Night Haven don't just rule wolves. His hand slid from her throat to cup her jaw, tilting her face up. We are the wolves, ancient spirits bound to human flesh by magic so old its origins are forgotten. We're stronger than normal shifters, faster, more dangerous. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Ariana's heart stuttered. And the bond, he continued, his voice dropping lower. The blood bond with a true Night Haven king is absolute. I can feel every emotion that crosses your mind. His eyes searched her face. And you'll feel me too. My rage, my hunger, everything. Ariana's mind reeled. She'd married not just an alpha, but something from the old stories. The legends whispered about the first wolves that walked the earth. The hunger, she said slowly. What hunger? His expression turned predatory. For you. Before Ariana could respond, he leaned down, his nose brushing along the column of her throat. She froze, heart hammering as he inhaled deeply. The sound he made was barely human, a low growl that vibrated against her skin. I can smell your fear, he murmured, lips brushing her pulse point. But underneath it, there's something else, something sweeter. Gregor, his name escaped as a breathless whisper. Do you know what happens, his mouth moved to her ear, when a Night Haven king claims his mate? It's not gentle. It's not civilized. The wolf takes what it wants, marks what belongs to it. His teeth grazed her earlobe, sending electricity down her spine. And right now, every instinct I have is screaming at me to mark you, to make sure every wolf in this citadel knows you're mine. Ariana's hands came up to his chest. Whether to push him away or pull him closer, she wasn't sure. She could feel his heart racing beneath her palms as fast as her own. Then why don't you? The question hung between them, charged with something Ariana didn't fully understand. Gregor pulled back just enough to look at her, and the conflict in his eyes made her chest ache. Because, he said roughly, once I start, I won't be able to stop, and you're already afraid enough. I'm not afraid of you, Ariana said, and realized it was true. Terrified of the situation, yes. Overwhelmed by everything that had happened, absolutely. But Gregor himself, the man who held such iron control despite the supernatural hunger she could see burning in his eyes, that man didn't frighten her. You should be. His hand was gentle as it slid into her hair, cradling the back of her head. You should run from me, Ariana, while you still can. It's too late for that. Ariana's fingers curled into his shirt. We're bonded. You said so yourself. There's no running from this. Something in Gregor's expression cracked, and before Ariana could process what was happening, his mouth crashed down on hers. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined a first kiss should be. It was fierce and demanding and tasted of desperation, as if he were drowning and she were air. Ariana gasped against his lips, and Gregor took advantage, deepening the kiss until she was dizzy with it. His arms banded around her waist, pulling her flush against him, and Ariana could feel the inhuman heat radiating from his body. That strange warmth she'd felt before exploded into an inferno, racing through her veins and pooling low in her belly. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Gregor rested his forehead against hers. This is wrong, he muttered, though his hands were still clenched in the fabric of her dress. You're 19, innocent. I'm your wife. Ariana interrupted, her voice shaking. And I'm not as innocent as you think. I know what happens between mates. Gregor laughed, the sound bitter. You know nothing, little witch. Nothing about what I want to do to you, what the wolf wants. He cut himself off with a curse, stepping back and running his hands through his dark hair. This is why I tried to stay away from you on the ride here. The bond makes everything harder, makes me want things I have no right to want. Ariana touched her lips, still tingling from his kiss. Her mind was chaos of sensation and confusion, but beneath it all, their connection pulsed with awareness. She sensed Gregor's desire, yes, but also his restraint, his genuine concern for her, his fear of becoming the monster he'd described. What if I want those things too? The words escaped before her courage failed. His eyes snapped to hers, blazing silver. Don't say that. Why not? Because it's inconvenient? Because you're trying to be noble? Ariana moved closer, emboldened by something she couldn't name. I felt what you felt when our blood mixed, Gregor. You're lonely. You've been alone in this citadel for 15 years, surrounded by wolves who fear you, ruling through strength because it's the only thing you trust. And now you have a mate, someone who's supposed to be your equal, and you're trying to push me away before we even begin. I'm trying to protect you, Gregor ground out. From you? Maybe I don't want to be protected. Ariana reached up, cupping his face the way he'd done to hers. His skin was fever hot beneath her palms. Maybe I want to understand you instead. For a heartbeat, Gregor leaned into her touch, his eyes drifting closed. He looked younger like this, more vulnerable, and Ariana felt her heart twist with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. Then his eyes opened, and they were blazing gold. Not silver anymore, but molten gold that seemed to glow with inner fire. "Gregor?" Ariana's voice came out strangled. "Your eyes!" "Run!" The word was barely human, more growl than speech. "Run now, Ariana. Before I do something we'll both regret." But Ariana was frozen, transfixed by the transformation happening before her. Gregor's canines had lengthened into fangs, his nails darkening into claws. His body seemed to vibrate with barely contained power, as if something enormous was trying to break free from his skin. "I can't!" His voice broke. "The wolf wants... You smell like..." He shook his head violently as if trying to clear it. "Get out! Now!" Ariana stumbled backward, but before she could reach the door, Gregor moved. One moment he was across the room, the next he had her pressed against the wall, his body caging hers. One hand braced beside her head, the other pressed flat against the stone, and Ariana could hear the cracking of rock beneath his palm. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and Ariana wasn't sure if he was apologizing for what he'd done or what he was about to do. "I'm so sorry." Then his mouth found the curve of her neck where it met her shoulder, and his fangs sank deep into her flesh. Ariana screamed, not from pain, though there was pain, sharp and bright and shocking. But the pain was immediately drowned by something else, a wave of sensation so intense it drove the breath from her lungs. Heat exploded through her veins, radiating out from the bite in pulsing waves that made her knees buckle. Gregor held her up effortlessly, one arm wrapping around her waist as he drank. Ariana could feel his satisfaction, his desperate need, the way her blood seemed to feed something wild and ancient in him. And beneath the fear and shock and overwhelming sensation, Ariana felt something else, a sense of rightness, as if this was what their connection had been reaching toward all along, as if his mark on her skin was completing something fundamental between them. When Gregor finally pulled back, his mouth was stained with her blood. His eyes were still gold, still wild, but there was horror in them now as they focused on her face. "What did you do?" Ariana whispered, her hand flying to her neck. She could feel the wound, deep and clean, already beginning to heal with supernatural speed. "I marked you." Gregor's voice was raw, destroyed. "The mating mark. I didn't mean to. I tried to fight it." He stepped back, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. "I'm sorry. God, Ariana, I'm so sorry." But Ariana wasn't listening because something was happening to her. Something impossible. The mark on her neck was burning, spreading heat through her entire body. And with that heat came power, wild, primal power that made her gasp and stumble. "What's happening to me?" She looked down at her hands and saw them beginning to glow with a faint golden light. Shock registered across Gregor's features. "That's not possible." "What's not possible?" Ariana's voice rose in panic as the glow intensified. "Gregor, what did you do to me?" "The mark." He moved toward her, catching her as her legs gave out. "It shares my power with you. That's what the mating mark does. But you're human. You shouldn't be able to..." He broke off as Ariana convulsed in his arms, her back arching as something enormous and terrible moved beneath her skin. She could feel it, a presence in her mind that hadn't been there before, ancient and wild and achingly familiar. "No," Gregor breathed, his arms tightening around her. "No, this can't be happening." "Make it stop," Ariana pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Gregor, make it stop." "I can't." His voice broke. "Ariana, I don't know how. This has never happened before. The mark shouldn't awaken anything in a human. You should just heal faster, be stronger, not..." He cursed in a language she didn't recognize. "Not this." "Not what?" Ariana gasped out between waves of pain and power. "What's happening to me?" Gregor looked down at her, and in his golden eyes, Ariana saw wonder and terror in equal measure. "You're transforming," he whispered. "The mark is turning you into one of us, into a wolf." Ariana's scream echoed through the citadel as her world shattered and reformed, and the last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Gregor's face, twisted with guilt and something that might have been grief. Then there was nothing but the fire in her veins and the howl of something ancient waking up inside her soul. The darkness that engulfed Ariana wasn't empty. It pulsed with dreams and memories, some hers, some not. She saw herself running through forests she'd never visited, felt the exhilaration of the hunt, tasted blood on her tongue. She witnessed battles fought centuries before her birth, felt the weight of a crown that wasn't Gregor's, experienced the crushing guilt of decisions she'd never made. And through it all, she sensed Gregor's presence. Not just the man she'd met, but the wolf inside him, ancient, powerful, and desperately afraid of what he'd done. Time lost meaning. Pain flared and receded like tides. Sometimes Ariana would surface briefly, catching fragmented conversations. "Never seen anything like it. Bloodlines were supposed to be extinct. If she dies, Your Majesty." "She won't die. She can't." That last voice was always Gregor's, strained but certain. And each time she heard it, Ariana found the strength to keep fighting through the fire that consumed her. When she finally opened her eyes, silver moonlight streamed through unfamiliar windows, and she lay amid silk sheets against her bare skin. For a moment, she remained perfectly still, trying to remember where she was and why every nerve in her body felt like it had been struck by lightning. Then it all came rushing back. The mark, Gregor's fangs in her throat, the terrible burning transformation that had torn through her like wildfire. She sat up abruptly, and the world exploded into overwhelming sensation. She could hear everything: guards walking 3 floors below, wind whistling through arrow slits in distant towers, the heartbeats of dozens of wolves somewhere in the citadel. She could smell everything, too: stone and steel, blood and sweat, and underneath it all, a scent that made something in her chest purr with recognition. Pine and winter frost and something wild. "Gregor, you're awake?" Ariana's head whipped toward the voice, and she found him sitting in a chair by the fireplace, watching her with those impossible eyes. He looked haggard, as if he hadn't slept in days, dark circles shadowing his sharp features. "How long?" Her voice came out rough, and she was shocked by the sound of it. Richer somehow, carrying an undertone of something predatory. 3 days. Gregor stood, moving toward the bed with careful slowness, as if approaching a spooked animal. "Your body was fighting the change. I thought—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I thought I'd killed you." Ariana looked down at herself, at hands that seemed the same, but felt fundamentally different. She was wearing a silk nightgown she didn't remember putting on, and when she touched her neck, she found smooth skin where the bite should have been. Only a faint scar remained, raised and sensitive. "What am I now?" she whispered. "A shifter." Gregor stopped at the edge of the bed, hands clenched at his sides as if restraining himself from reaching for her. "The mark shared my power with you, but your body had latent wolf blood. It must have been dormant for generations in the Shadowcrest line, waiting for a catalyst. My bite awakened it." "Wolf blood?" Ariana's mind reeled. "That's impossible. The Shadowcrest line is human. We've always been human." "Somewhere in your ancestry, there was a wolf." His gaze searched her face. "And now that blood has manifested. You're one of us, Ariana, a true shifter, bonded to an ancient king. Do you understand what that means?" "That I can never go home." The words came out flat, emotionless, but Ariana felt grief clawing at her throat. "My family won't recognize what I've become." "You are home." Gregor's voice was quiet but firm. "Night Haven is your home now. These wolves are your pack, and I—" He stopped himself, jaw working. "I am responsible for what you've become." Ariana looked at him, really looked at him, and she felt his guilt like a physical weight. "You didn't mean for this to happen." "That doesn't change what I did." Gregor turned away. "I marked you without permission, turned you into something you never asked to be. You should hate me." "I don't." The words surprised Ariana as much as they seemed to surprise him. She slid off the bed, her new body moving with a grace she'd never possessed before. "I should, but I can feel you, Gregor. Your guilt, your fear, and underneath it all—" She moved closer. "Your loneliness." "Stop!" His voice was strained. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Ariana reached out, her hand hovering over his shoulder. She didn't touch him, but she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You've been alone for 15 years, and now you finally have someone who can't run from you, someone who's bound to you by magic and blood, and you're terrified of destroying me the way your father destroyed your mother. Gregor spun to face her, his eyes blazing. How do you— I saw your memories when our blood mixed. Your father, your mother, what his mark did to her. For a long moment, Gregor just stared at her. Then his shoulders sagged, and he looked more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Then you know why I'm terrified. My mother survived the mark for 3 years before it consumed her. She burned out from the inside, and I— His voice broke. I watched her die screaming, and I was too young, too weak to help her. And now I've done the same thing to you. I'm not your mother. Ariana finally closed the distance between them, taking his hands in hers. Their connection flared to life, and she felt his surprise at how strong she felt. The mark awakened something in me, Gregor, something that was always there. I'm not burning out. I'm becoming what I was always meant to be. You don't know that. Neither do you. So instead of assuming the worst, why don't we see what happens together? Before Gregor could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door. His expression immediately shifted, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the mask of the Winter King. Enter, he commanded. A lean man with dark hair shot through with silver stepped into the room. His eyes widened slightly when they landed on Ariana. Your Majesty and my queen, you're awake. Tharkus! Gregor's voice was hard. What's happened? Trouble at the eastern border. Someone sent soldiers across our territory. They're claiming it was an accident, but— Tharkus's gaze flickered to Ariana again. They were specifically asking about the human bride, the one you just married. Ice flooded Ariana's veins. Why would they want me? Because word has spread. Tharkus's tone was grim. The Winter King has taken a mate, and there are those who see that as an opportunity to test your strength or exploit a potential weakness. How many soldiers? Gregor's voice went deadly quiet. 50, maybe more. The patrol is holding them back, but they're outnumbered. Gregor was already moving toward his weapons. Ready, my guard. We ride within the hour. Gregor, wait. Ariana grabbed his arm. This is a trap. They want you to rush out, angry and reckless. He looked down at her, and something in his expression softened fractionally. They've invaded my territory and threatened my mate. I won't hide behind these walls. I'm not asking you to hide. Ariana lifted her chin. I'm asking you to take me with you. Absolutely not. I'm not weak anymore. She pulled her hand back and felt power surge beneath her skin. Golden light flickered around her fingers, and both men stared. Whatever I'm becoming, it's more than just a wolf. The mark gave me something else, something I can feel but don't understand yet. Which is exactly why you're staying here. Gregor's voice was firm. You don't know how to control your power. You don't know how to fight. And I won't risk— You don't get to decide that. Ariana's eyes blazed. I'm your queen, remember? Your equal, not some fragile thing to be locked away for safekeeping. Tharkus cleared his throat. She has a point, Gregor. And if they're specifically asking about her, bringing her might give us an advantage they don't expect. Gregor looked between them, clearly torn. She felt his warring instincts, the need to protect her battling with his recognition that she was right. Fine, he finally ground out. But you stay close to me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Ariana smiled, feeling her new fangs press against her lip. Understood. They rode out within the hour, 20 wolves flanking them on all sides. Ariana wore leather armor that Tharkus had provided, supple and light, dyed the deep crimson of Nighthaven's colors. Gregor had armed her with a silver dagger, though they both knew her real weapon was the power thrumming beneath her skin. The eastern border was several hours' hard ride through mountain passes and dense forest. With every mile, Ariana felt her new senses sharpening. She could smell the wolves around her, distinguish each individual scent. She could hear their whispered conversations, feel the nervous energy crackling through the group. But most of all, she could feel Gregor. He rode beside her, his presence a constant warmth at the edge of her awareness, and his fear for her was palpable despite his controlled expression. Tell me what to expect, she said as they crested a ridge. A fight. Gregor's voice was grim. Whoever sent these soldiers wants blood. They'll have poisoned weapons, wolf's bane extract. One cut, and most shifters are paralyzed within minutes. Most shifters? The ancient bloodlines are more resistant, but even I can be overwhelmed if they dose me enough. His hand moved to his sword hilt, That's why you need to stay back if it comes to combat. And if I can help? Gregor looked at her, his silver eyes searching her face. Then help. But don't try to be a hero, Ariana. I've ruled for 15 years without anyone to worry about. I don't know how to fight and protect someone at the same time. Then don't protect me. Ariana met his gaze steadily. Trust me to protect myself. Before he could respond, one of the scouts ahead raised a hand in warning. They'd reached the border. The valley below was in chaos. Nighthaven wolves in their battle forms fought against soldiers in dark armor. And even from a distance, Ariana could see the unnatural sheen on their weapons. Poison blades. There are more than 50, Tharkus said grimly. Closer to 100. Gregor's expression went cold. Then we even the odds. Tharkus, take half our force and flank from the north. I'll hit them from the south. What about the queen? She's with me. Gregor looked at Ariana. Last chance to stay back. Not a chance. Ariana drew her dagger, feeling power surge in response. Let's show them what happens when they threaten Nighthaven. The battle was brutal and chaotic. Ariana found herself in the thick of it within moments, her body moving on pure instinct. She was faster than the soldiers, stronger than she had any right to be. Her dagger found gaps in armor with supernatural precision. But it was when the first soldier's poisoned blade grazed her arm that everything changed. Pain exploded through her limb, and Ariana stumbled. The soldier grinned, raising his sword for a killing blow. Not so tough now, little queen. His words cut off as golden light erupted from Ariana's wound. Not just light, healing magic, pure and ancient, burning away the poison before it could spread. The soldier's expression morphed to terror as Ariana straightened, her wound already closing. My turn, she said, and struck. Around the battlefield, poisoned wolves began to glow with the same golden light. Ariana didn't understand how, but somehow her healing magic was spreading, burning away poison wherever it touched. Wounded shifters rose renewed, fighting with coordinated precision. Impossible! Someone shouted. She's healing them! Gregor appeared at her side, his fur matted with blood, but his eyes blazing with pride. He shifted back to human form just long enough to say, You're magnificent. Then he was back in the fight, tearing through enemy lines with renewed vigor. The enemy soldiers broke and ran, fleeing into the forest, leaving behind their wounded and weapons in their haste to escape. As silence fell over the valley, Ariana collapsed to her knees, exhausted. She'd never used so much power at once. Every muscle trembled, and her vision swam. Ariana! Gregor caught her before she hit the ground. You overdid it. You need to rest. Did we win? She whispered. We won. He pressed his forehead to hers. You won. Whatever that power is, it changes everything. Tharkus appeared, looking between them with a mix of shock and calculation. The queen can heal poison, the weapon that's been devastating our people for years. She can cure it. Gregor's arms tightened around Ariana, which means she just became the most valuable person in the Northern Territories and the most dangerous target. Ariana wanted to respond, but exhaustion pulled at her consciousness. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Gregor's voice, rough with emotion. I've got you, little witch. You're safe. I promise you're safe. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Ariana believed him. Ariana woke in her chambers at Crimson Citadel with sunlight streaming through the windows. For a moment she lay still, taking inventory. Her body ached, but the exhaustion from the battle was gone, and her arm, where the poisoned blade had cut her, there wasn't even a scar. You heal faster now, Gregor's voice came from the chair by the window. One of the benefits of being bonded to an ancient bloodline. Ariana sat up, pulling the silk sheet around her. How long was I asleep? 2 days. He rose and moved to pour water from a silver pitcher. Your body needed time to recover from using so much magic at once. Thalia says you're lucky you didn't burn yourself out completely. Thalia? An ancient healer who's been with my household for decades. She's been monitoring you throughout your recovery. Gregor brought her the water, and Ariana noticed the dark circles under his eyes. She also confirmed what Tharkus suspected. Your healing magic isn't just normal pack healing. It's something older, something from the first wolves. Ariana drank deeply, her throat parched. The first wolves? Before the pack split into different bloodlines, there were the originals, wolves who walked with gods and wielded magic as naturally as breathing. Gregor sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch her. That power has been diluted over generations, but sometimes it resurfaces in descendants, usually only in tiny amounts, but you— He shook his head. You have it in full measure. That's what the mark awakened in your ancient Shadowcrest bloodline. So I'm what, some kind of ancient wolf reborn? You're the most powerful healer in the Northern Territories. Gregor's voice was grim. Which means every enemy we have will want you dead or captured. The battle at the border was just the beginning. Before Ariana could respond, rapid knocking sounded at the door. Tharkus entered without waiting for permission, his face pale. We have a problem. A raven just arrived from Iron Spire. He hesitated. From Lord Dominic Raventhorn himself. Ariana's blood ran cold at the name. What does he want? He's calling for a peace summit. Claims he wants to negotiate an end to hostilities between the human kingdoms and the wolf packs. Tharkus's expression made it clear what he thought of that. He is specifically requesting both your Majesty's presence, the King and Queen of Night Haven. It's a trap, Ariana said immediately. Obviously, Gregor agreed, but refusing would make us look weak, like we're afraid of the humans. Are we? Ariana challenged. After what we just did to their soldiers? We defeated 100 men. Tharkus's voice was heavy. Intelligence suggests Raventhorn has access to thousands. And according to our spies, he's been working with someone powerful, someone who wants the wolf packs destroyed completely. Who? Gregor demanded. We don't know yet. But whoever they are, they've been stockpiling Wolf's Bane for years, enough to poison every shifter in the Northern Territories, until the Queen demonstrated she can cure it. Tharkus met Gregor's eyes. Now their entire strategy is useless. So they'll change strategies, Ariana said slowly. Find another way to kill us. Which is why this summit is dangerous, Gregor stood, pacing. They'll have had time to plan something new, something we won't see coming. Then we don't go. Ariana rose as well, surprised by how steady her legs felt. We send an emissary. Show them we're not afraid, but we're not stupid either. That might work, Tharkus said thoughtfully. If we— No. Gregor cut him off. They specifically requested the Queen. If we refuse, they'll know we're protecting her. They'll know she's our weakness. I'm not a weakness, Ariana said quietly. You're the only thing in this world I can't afford to lose. Gregor's voice was raw. That makes you a weakness, Ariana. My weakness. The admission hung in the air between them. Ariana felt the depth of his fear, not for himself, but for her. And underneath it, something else. Something that might have been love if he'd let himself feel it. Then we need to make me a strength instead. Ariana moved to the wardrobe, pulling out riding clothes. We go to this summit, but we go prepared. We show them that the King and Queen of Night Haven are not to be trifled with. You don't understand what you're suggesting, Gregor said. If this is truly a trap, then we spring it and survive. Ariana turned to face him, her eyes blazing with determination. You've spent 15 years ruling through fear, Gregor, always alone, always isolated. But you're not alone anymore, so stop trying to protect me from the throne I earned when I became your mate, and start treating me like the queen I am. Silence fell. Tharkus looked between them, clearly trying not to smile. Gregor stared at Ariana, emotions warring across his face. Finally, he inclined his head. As you wish, my queen. We'll attend the summit together. Good. Ariana began dressing, her movements efficient. When is it? 1 week hence at the ruins of Starfall, Tharkus said. Neutral ground. Then we have 1 week to prepare. Ariana fastened the last buckle on her leather vest and turned to face them both. Let's make sure whoever's behind this regrets ever challenging Night Haven. The week passed in a blur of training and preparation. Thalia worked with Ariana daily, helping her understand and control her healing magic. It wasn't just about curing poison. Ariana could heal wounds, cure sickness, even ease pain with a touch. The power comes from your compassion, Talia explained one afternoon as Ariana successfully healed a wolf's broken leg. The old woman's face was lined with age, but her eyes held ancient wisdom. The first wolves were guardians as well as predators. They protected their packs not just with strength, but with magic. You carry that legacy in your ancient bloodline. Ariana flexed her glowing hands, marveling at the golden light. Can all wolves with ancient blood do this? Some can heal small wounds. A few can sense illness. Talia's weathered face was serious. But what you can do, curing wolf's bane, healing mortal wounds, spreading your power to others, that's unique. That's why you're so dangerous to our enemies." At night, Gregor came to her chambers, not to her bed. He still kept that line carefully drawn, but to sit by the fire and talk. He told her about his childhood, about watching his father's madness grow, about the terrible choice he'd faced at 20 years old. "I killed him in front of the entire court," Gregor said one night, staring into the flames. "My own father. And when his blood was still wet on my hands, I took his crown and dared anyone to challenge me." "You saved your people," Ariana said quietly. "I became the monster everyone feared." He looked at her, his silver eyes full of old pain. "That's why I never took a mate, why I never let anyone close. Because the kings of Nighthaven don't love, Ariana. We consume, we destroy, and I refuse to do to someone else what my father did to my mother. But you haven't destroyed me." Ariana moved to sit beside him. "I'm stronger now than I was before. The mark didn't break me. It completed me." "You don't know that yet." But his hand found hers, their fingers lacing together. "The mark's effects can take years to fully manifest." "Then I guess we'll find out together." Ariana leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling his warmth. "You keep trying to push me away, Gregor, but it's not working. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not going to break, and I'm certainly not going anywhere." She felt him sigh, his arm coming around her shoulders. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. Good thing you married me then." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn down to embers, and Ariana thought that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. The night before they were to leave for Starfall, Ariana couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony, looking out at the mountains, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. "Second thoughts?" Gregor's voice came from the doorway. "Third and fourth thoughts." Ariana didn't turn around. "This is insane, isn't it? Walking into an obvious trap." "Completely insane." Gregor moved to stand beside her. "Which is why I'm bringing 50 wolves instead of 20, and why Tharkus is riding ahead with scouts to survey the ruins before we arrive." "That won't be enough if they're serious about killing us." "No." His hand covered hers on the balcony railing. "But your power might be. If you can heal our wolves faster than they can poison them, we have a chance." Ariana looked down at their joined hands. "I'm scared." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." Gregor turned her to face him. "But don't let it control you. You've already proven you're stronger than anyone expected, including me." "What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then we die together." His thumb brushed across her cheek. "But I don't plan on dying tomorrow, Ariana, and neither should you." He leaned down and kissed her, and Ariana rose on her toes to meet him halfway. It was different from their first kiss, less desperate, more tender, a promise rather than a claiming. When they broke apart, Gregor rested his forehead against hers. "Come back to bed. You need rest." "Will you stay?" The words slipped out before Ariana could stop them. "Just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight." Something flickered in Gregor's eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." They lay together in her massive bed, Ariana tucked against Gregor's side, his arm wrapped protectively around her. She could hear his heartbeat beneath her ear, steady and strong. "Gregor," she whispered, "if tomorrow, nothing will happen. But if it does..." She lifted her head to look at him. "I want you to know that I don't regret any of this. Not the marriage, not the mark, not becoming your mate. You gave me a purpose bigger than just surviving. You made me a queen." Gregor's hand came up to cup her face, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. "You were always a queen, Ariana. I just gave you a kingdom." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Ariana felt heat building between them. But before it could go further, Gregor pulled back with a rueful smile. "Sleep. We have a long ride tomorrow." Ariana settled back against his chest, feeling safer than she had in weeks. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together, and that was enough. The dawn broke clear and cold as they prepared for the journey to Starfall. Ariana dressed in armor crafted specially for her, a compromise between protection and mobility. Silver accents gleamed against black leather, and the blackthorn sigil decorated her breastplate, matching Gregor's. A circlet of silver rested in her dark hair, marking her as queen. Word of their destination had spread through the citadel, and a crowd gathered in the courtyard to see them off. Ariana was surprised by the concern in their faces. These wolves who had been strangers just days ago now looked to her with something like hope. "They believe in you," Talia said, appearing at Ariana's side as she checked her mount's saddle. They've heard the stories of what you did at the border, how you cured the uncurable, how you turned certain defeat into victory. You've given them something they haven't had in a very long time. What's that? The old healer's smile was gentle. Faith that things can change, that darkness doesn't have to last forever. Before Ariana could respond, Gregor approached, magnificent in his battle armor. His gaze swept over her, pride evident in his eyes. "Ready?" Ariana nodded, swallowing her fear. "Ready." As they rode out, the wolves of Crimson Citadel howled in unison, a sound that echoed off the mountains in eerie harmony. A blessing, Ariana realized, a prayer for their safe return. Tharkus rode at the head of their column, leading them through mountain passes and dense forests. The journey to Starfall would take most of the day, and they rode in tense silence. Gregor remained close to Ariana, his presence a reassuring constant at her side. "Tell me about Raventhorn," she said as they paused at midday to rest the horses. "You trusted him once, didn't you?" Gregor's expression darkened. "Dominic served my father before me. When I took the throne, he swore fealty with the rest. I never fully trusted him. He was too smooth, too quick with solutions that benefited only himself. But I kept him close, used his connections with the human kingdoms. And now he's betrayed you." "Us," Gregor corrected. "He's betrayed us, and he'll pay for it." As the sun began its descent, they reached the edge of a vast plain. In the distance, crumbling stone structures rose from the earth like broken teeth. The ruins of Starfall, once a great city of both humans and wolves, now abandoned for centuries. "The Old Kingdom," Tharkus explained, seeing Ariana's interest. "Before the wars, before the species separated, this was the capital of a united realm. The old stories say it fell in a single night when the stars themselves rained fire from the sky. And now it's neutral ground," Gregor added. "Sacred to both sides, the perfect place for peace talks, or an ambush." They made camp a mile from the ruins, waiting for dawn when the summit was scheduled to begin. Their scouts reported that Lord Raventhorn's party had already arrived and set up an elaborate pavilion among the ancient stones. The humans numbered in the hundreds, all armed, all watching the approaches with vigilance. That night, Ariana couldn't sleep again. The tension in the camp was palpable, every wolf aware that tomorrow could bring either peace or slaughter. She found herself wandering to the edge of their perimeter, staring at the distant ruins silhouetted against the starry sky. "You should be resting," Gregor's voice came from behind her. "So should you," she countered, not turning around. He came to stand beside her, following her gaze to Starfall. "When I was a child, my mother would tell me stories about this place. She said the stones remember a time when our kind lived in harmony, when the hatred between us hadn't yet poisoned everything." "Do you think that's possible again?" Ariana asked. "Peace? I don't know." His hand found hers in the darkness. "But for the first time in 15 years, I'm willing to consider it. Because of you." Ariana squeezed his fingers. "Then let's make sure we survive tomorrow to see it happen." Morning came too quickly. As the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, their party mounted and rode toward the ruins. 50 wolves in formation, with Gregor and Ariana at the center, protected on all sides. The golden light of sunrise caught on their armor, making them gleam like something out of legend. Starfall spread before them, a maze of tumbled columns and crumbling walls. At its center stood what must once have been a grand temple, now open to the sky. In front of it, a massive pavilion of scarlet and gold had been erected, flying the banner of Iron Spire, a sword piercing a mountain. And standing before that pavilion, surrounded by at least 200 soldiers in gleaming armor, was Lord Dominic Raventhorn. He watched their approach with a smile that never reached his eyes. Gregor and Ariana dismounted, flanked by Tharkus and 10 elite guards. They walked the final distance on foot, a show of respect for the sacred ground. Ariana kept her head high, refusing to be intimidated by the human soldiers who watched her with suspicion and fear. "His Majesty, Gregor Blackthorn, King of Nighthaven," Raventhorn called out as they approached. "And his new queen, the former Ariana Shadowcrest. How delightful that you accepted my invitation." "Lord Raventhorn," Gregor's voice was cold, "I trust you have an explanation for your forces crossing our border uninvited." "A misunderstanding." Raventhorn waved a dismissive hand. "Soldiers can be so overzealous. But that's precisely why I've called this summit, to prevent such unfortunate incidents in the future." His gaze moved to Ariana, assessing. My congratulations on your marriage, Your Majesty. Word of your unusual abilities has spread far and wide. Some might call it miraculous, what happened at the eastern border. Some might call it a warning, Ariana replied evenly, to those who would threaten Nighthaven. Raventhorn's smile tightened. Indeed. Well, shall we proceed to the negotiations? I've prepared a comfortable space inside. Gregor exchanged a glance with Ariana. The trap, if there was one, would be sprung inside that pavilion, but they had come too far to turn back now. Lead the way, Gregor said. The interior of the pavilion was opulent, with rich carpets covering the ancient stone floor and braziers providing warmth against the morning chill. A large table dominated the center, laden with maps and documents. Chairs had been arranged on either side, with a grand seat at the head clearly meant for Raventhorn. Ariana noticed that all the exits were guarded by soldiers, and there was something else, a subtle scent that her enhanced senses picked up. Something acrid and chemical, hidden beneath the perfumes and incense burning in the braziers. Gregor noticed it too. His hand tightened on hers briefly, a silent warning. Please be seated, Raventhorn gestured to the chairs. Wine? We prefer to keep our wits about us, Gregor declined. Let's not waste time on pleasantries, Dominic. Why are we really here? Raventhorn's facade of hospitality fell away. Very well. To business then. He unrolled a map across the table. The borders between our realms have been contested for generations. I propose a new arrangement, one that would grant Ironspire access to the northern passes in exchange for a formal end to hostilities. Those passes are the lifeblood of our trade, Tharkas objected. Without them, you'd still have your lives, Raventhorn cut in, which is more than you deserve after centuries of preying on humanity. Preying? Ariana couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. It was humans who hunted wolves nearly to extinction during the Purge. It was humans who broke the Old Kingdom's covenant. Raventhorn's eyes narrowed. You speak of history you can't possibly understand, girl. You who were human mere days ago. I understand enough, Ariana replied. I understand that you never intended peace. This summit is a sham. A slow, cold smile spread across Raventhorn's face. Perhaps you're more perceptive than I gave you credit for. He turned to Gregor. Did you truly believe I wanted peace with your kind, after what your father did to my sister? Gregor went still. Your sister? Mara Raventhorn. Your father's fourth wife. The one who tried to run. The one he hunted down like an animal and tore apart in front of the entire court. Dominic's eyes blazed with old hatred. I was 10 years old. I watched from the shadows as your monstrous father bathed in her blood, and I vowed that one day I would see every last Blackthorn suffer the same fate. Understanding dawned on Gregor's face. That's why you arranged the marriage. You wanted Ariana to suffer the same fate as your sister. I expected the bite to kill her, yes. Raventhorn shrugged. The bloodline curse has destroyed every human mate a Blackthorn has ever taken. Imagine my surprise when reports came back of a golden queen with healing powers. He looked at Ariana with genuine curiosity. What are you, I wonder? What strange magic flows in your veins that you survived what no other could? You'll never find out, Ariana said coldly. This conversation is over. We're leaving. I think not. Raventhorn made a subtle gesture, and the guards at the doors stepped forward, drawing their weapons. You see, while the wolf's bane we so carefully stockpiled may no longer be effective against you, there are older poisons, ancient concoctions designed specifically for the first wolves. He nodded toward the braziers, where the strange-smelling incense continued to burn. Even now you're breathing it in. Black lotus, mixed with silver dust and the blood of a dying alpha. In moments, your powers will begin to fade, your strength will leave you, and then, his smile turned cruel, then we'll see exactly what it takes to kill the last of the first wolves. Ariana felt it then, a creeping coldness in her limbs, a dulling of her senses. Beside her, Gregor swayed slightly, his face gone pale. The poison was already working. You won't leave this place alive, Gregor growled, fighting to stay upright. My wolves will be slaughtered by the 500 soldiers I have surrounding these ruins, Raventhorn finished. Did you truly think I'd come unprepared? I've spent 15 years planning this moment, Blackthorn. Nothing has been left to chance. Ariana felt panic rising as her vision began to blur. Her healing magic flickered beneath her skin, but it felt muted, unable to burn away the insidious poison. She reached for Gregor, finding his hand cold in hers. "Fight it," he whispered. "Whatever strength you have left, Ariana, fight." She closed her eyes, searching deep within herself for the power that had saved them at the border. But it seemed distant now, unreachable through the fog of poison. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, Ariana felt something else, a presence in her mind that wasn't Gregor. Something ancient and wild that had been slumbering since the mark first awakened it. The wolf, her wolf. And it was angry. Heat surged through Ariana's body. Not the gentle warmth of her healing magic, but something fierce and primal. Her eyes snapped open and Raventhorn took an involuntary step back. "What?" he began, then froze as Ariana rose to her feet. "You made a mistake, Lord Raventhorn," she said, and her voice had changed, carrying echoes of something inhuman. "You thought you were hunting wolves, but we're not just wolves." Golden light exploded from her body, shattering the braziers and sending guards stumbling back in terror. But this wasn't her healing light. This was something older and more terrible. As it washed over Gregor, he gasped, strength visibly returning to his limbs. "We are the first," Ariana continued, and now her skin was beginning to ripple, bones shifting beneath the surface. "The ones who walked with gods, the ones who made the covenant your kind broke." "Kill them!" Raventhorn screamed, backing away. "Kill them now!" Guards rushed forward, but they were too late. Gregor was already changing, his massive wolf form tearing through his human clothes. And beside him, Ariana felt her own transformation begin. Not the painful, burning change she had experienced with the mark, but something natural and exhilarating. Her body flowed from human to wolf in a heartbeat, and she stood beside Gregor, her fur white as snow with golden markings spiraling across her flanks. Power surged through her veins, burning away the poison as if it were nothing. Through the bond, she felt Gregor's shock and wonder. In centuries of Blackthorn history, no queen had ever manifested a wolf form so quickly, so completely. Together they launched themselves at the guards, teeth tearing through armor as if it were parchment. Tharkus and the other wolves had transformed as well, their strength renewed by whatever magic Ariana had unleashed. Raventhorn fled toward the exit, terror evident on his face. But Ariana was faster. She cut him off, cornering him against a fallen column. As he drew his sword with shaking hands, she shifted back to human form, golden light still pulsing around her body. "Please," he begged, "I can explain." "No explanation needed," Ariana said coldly. "You wanted to destroy everything I love, everything I've become." She felt Gregor approach, still in his wolf form, massive and terrifying. Through their bond, she felt his rage, his desire to tear Raventhorn limb from limb. "Gregor wants to kill you," she told the trembling lord, "and I'm tempted to let him, but death would be too merciful." She reached out, placing her hand on Raventhorn's forehead. "Instead, you're going to experience exactly what your actions have caused. Every death, every moment of suffering. You're going to feel it all." Golden light flowed from her fingers into Raventhorn's mind, and he screamed, a sound of pure anguish that echoed through the ruins. When she pulled her hand away, he collapsed to his knees, eyes vacant, tears streaming down his face. "What did you do to him?" Tharkus asked, approaching in human form, his clothes torn from the transformation. "I showed him the truth," Ariana said simply. "Every death he caused, every life he ruined, he'll live with those memories for the rest of his days." She looked at Gregor, who had shifted back to human form. "Is that punishment enough?" Gregor looked at the broken man before them. "For now. He'll stand trial before the Council of Alphas. They'll decide his ultimate fate." He turned to Tharkus. "Secure him, and send word to our forces outside. I want every one of Raventhorn's soldiers captured or driven off." As Tharkus and the others moved to carry out his orders, Gregor turned to Ariana. "What happened in here? That power? I've never felt anything like it." "I found my wolf," Ariana said quietly. Or maybe she found me. When the poison was shutting down my healing magic, something else woke up inside me, something older. "The first wolf," Gregor breathed. "The legends say they could channel magic through their entire pack, amplify each other's powers." He reached out, tracing the line of her jaw with wonder in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "It means Raventhorn failed," Ariana said. "It means we survived." "It means more than that." Gregor's eyes were intense. "It means you're not just my mate, Ariana. You're my equal in every way, and together—" He shook his head, something like awe in his expression. "Together, there's nothing we can't face." Outside the pavilion, the sounds of battle had already faded. Raventhorn's forces, seeing their leader captured and facing the fury of Nighthaven's wolves, were surrendering or fleeing in disarray. Ariana stepped into the sunlight, feeling the warmth on her skin. For the first time since leaving Embermist, she felt truly alive, truly herself. Not just the girl who had sacrificed herself for her family, but a queen who had found her power and her place. Gregor came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "What now, my queen?" Ariana looked out at the ancient ruins of Starfall, where humans and wolves had once lived in harmony. "Now we build something new, something better than what came before." And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ariana felt the future unfolding before them, uncertain, dangerous, but full of possibilities. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The Winter King and his Golden Queen, united by blood, by magic, and by a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. The journey back to Crimson Citadel was triumphant yet somber. Dominic Raventhorn rode bound and under heavy guard, his vacant eyes staring at nothing, still lost in the horrors Ariana had forced him to witness. The betrayal had shaken the wolves of Nighthaven, but the victory at Starfall had transformed their queen from a curiosity into a legend. Word traveled faster than they did. By the time the royal party crested the final ridge overlooking the citadel, hundreds of wolves had gathered outside the walls, waiting to welcome them home. As Gregor and Ariana rode through the gates, the crowd erupted in a chorus of howls that echoed across the mountains. "They're not just celebrating victory," Tharkus murmured, riding beside Ariana. "They're celebrating you." Ariana felt overwhelmed by the adoration in their eyes. These people had been strangers mere weeks ago, yet now they looked to her with reverence and hope. It was a heavier burden than she'd expected. That evening, after Raventhorn had been secured in the deepest cells beneath the citadel, a council of war convened in the Great Hall. Gregor sat at the head of a massive oak table, Ariana at his right hand. Around them gathered the pack leaders who had pledged loyalty to Nighthaven, along with Tharkus and the Citadel's most trusted advisors. "Raventhorn's capture will buy us time, but not peace," Gregor began, his voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "His agents have been spreading rumors throughout the human kingdoms, painting us as monsters who thirst for human blood. The attack at Starfall was meant to be the first of many." Thalia, the ancient healer who had helped Ariana understand her powers, spoke from her place near the hearth. "Our scouts report that several human kingdoms have already begun marshaling forces. They speak of a final solution to the wolf problem." "How many soldiers?" one of the pack leaders asked, his weathered face grim. "At least 30,000, Tharkus answered. "Perhaps more if the southern kingdoms join the alliance." A murmur of dismay rippled through the gathered wolves. Even with every pack in the northern territories united under Gregor's banner, they could barely field 3,000 fighters. "Those are impossible odds," someone muttered. "We've faced impossible odds before," Gregor countered, his silver eyes gleaming in the firelight. "And now we have a weapon they didn't account for." His gaze turned to Ariana. "We have a queen who can heal the unhealable and transform when she's barely been marked for a month." All eyes in the room shifted to Ariana. She felt their scrutiny, their desperate hope, and the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "My power alone won't win this war," she said honestly, "but perhaps it's not meant to be used alone." Thalia leaned forward, her ancient eyes suddenly alight with interest. "What are you suggesting, my queen?" "At Starfall, when this poison was stealing our strength, I channeled power not just into myself, but into Gregor and our wolves. I amplified their abilities, burned away the toxin." Ariana looked to Gregor. "The legends say the first wolves could share their power through pack bonds. What if we could recreate that on a larger scale?" "A network of power," Talia whispered, understanding dawning. "Like the old stories of the Great Pack, where every wolf was connected to the others through the alpha pair." "Exactly," Ariana nodded. "But to do that, I would need to form bonds with key warriors. Bonds similar to what I share with Gregor, but not as deep. Then those warriors could channel my healing to others during battle, creating a web of protection across our forces. A heavy silence fell over the room. Gregor's expression had darkened, though he said nothing. The other wolves exchanged glances, some eager, others uncertain. Such bonds would require blood magic, Talia said carefully. The sharing of essence between wolves. It hasn't been done in centuries, not since the Covenant Wars. Because it's dangerous, one of the older pack leaders growled. Such bonds tax both parties. If the queen were to create dozens of them, the strain could kill her. And if we do nothing, we all die, Ariana countered. I would rather risk myself for a chance at victory than watch our people slaughtered, because I was too afraid to try. The debate raged long into the night. Some argued passionately for Ariana's plan, seeing it as their only hope against overwhelming numbers. Others cautioned restraint, fearing that such ancient magic might carry unforeseen consequences. Through it all, Gregor remained silent, his face unreadable, though Ariana could feel his turmoil through their bond. It was nearly dawn when the council finally adjourned without a firm decision. As the pack leaders departed to seek their beds, Gregor took Ariana's hand and led her to their private chambers. Only when the heavy doors closed behind them did he finally speak. "You can't do this." His voice was low, strained with emotion he rarely showed to others. "Creating one bond nearly killed you. Creating dozens would burn you out completely." "You don't know that," Ariana argued, though part of her feared he was right. "Thalia thinks it might work. The blood of the first wolves runs in my veins. Perhaps I'm meant to use it this way." "And perhaps you're meant to live." Gregor paced the room like a caged animal. "Ariana, I've spent 15 years ruling alone, making decisions that affected thousands without hesitation. But this—" He stopped, turning to face her with raw vulnerability in his eyes. "I can't lose you. I won't survive it." The admission stole her breath. Through their bond, she felt the depth of his fear, the terrifying intensity of his feelings for her. In the space of a month, she had become his world, his anchor in the storm of violence and isolation that had been his life. "Gregor," Ariana crossed to him, laying her hands against his chest. "We're facing extinction, not just Nighthaven, not just the Blackthorn line, but all wolfkind. If I have the power to prevent that, how can I not try?" He captured her hands in his. "Then we find another way, one that doesn't risk your life." "There is no other way." She met his eyes steadily. "You know that as well as I do. Our only advantage is my power. We have to use it." Gregor's jaw clenched. He released her hands and walked to the window, staring out at the mountains touched by the first light of dawn. "How many bonds?" he finally asked, his back still to her. 20 at most," Ariana answered. "The strongest wolves from each pack. Enough to spread my healing throughout our forces during battle, but not so many that the strain would overwhelm me." "And if I forbid it?" He turned to face her again, his expression hard. "If I command, as your king, that you will not take this risk?" Ariana felt a flash of anger. "Then I would defy you as your queen. This isn't just your decision, Gregor. These are my powers, my life, my choice." For a long moment, they stared at each other, neither willing to yield. Then something shifted in Gregor's eyes, a resignation but also a fierce pride. Fierce, "You truly are meant to rule," he said softly. "No Blackthorn queen in our history has ever stood against her king for the good of the pack. None has ever had the strength." "Is that a yes?" Ariana asked, hardly daring to hope. Gregor closed the distance between them in 3 long strides. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the storm raging behind his eyes. "It's a compromise," he said. 5 bonds, not 20. We test your theory on a small scale first. If it works, if you show no signs of weakening, then we consider expanding the network. Agreed?" It was less than she'd hoped for, but more than she'd expected. "Agreed." He sealed the bargain with a kiss that left her breathless, pouring all his fear and hope and love into the contact. When they finally broke apart, Ariana rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "we face it together." "Together," he echoed, his arms tightening around her. "Always together." The preparations began immediately. Thalia and the other healers scoured the ancient texts for anything that might help Ariana create the bonds safely. Meanwhile, Gregor and Tharkas selected the 5 wolves who would be the first to receive her mark, the strongest, most disciplined warriors from different packs, all volunteers eager to serve their queen. 5 days after their return from Starfall, everything was ready. The ritual would take place in the sacred grove at the heart of the citadel, where the first stones had been laid centuries ago by the Blackthorn ancestors. As night fell, Ariana bathed in water infused with herbs and wolfsbane, not enough to harm, but enough to strengthen her connection to her wolf side. Talia helped her dress in a simple robe of white linen, embroidered with golden thread in patterns so ancient their meaning had been lost to time. "Are you afraid?" the old healer asked as she braided Ariana's hair in the ritual style. "Yes," Ariana admitted, "but fear won't stop me." "Good." Talia tied off the braid with a strip of leather. "Fear keeps us honest. It reminds us that power always comes with a price." She turned Ariana to face her, ancient eyes meeting young ones. The old texts warn that when a wolf of the first blood creates such bonds, the connection flows both ways. You will feel their pain, their joy, their most intense emotions, and they will feel yours. There will be no secrets, no hiding. Are you prepared for that? Ariana thought of Gregor, of the bond they shared that had already stripped away her defenses and laid bare her soul. "I'm prepared." The sacred grove was lit by dozens of torches when Ariana arrived, their flames casting dancing shadows across the ancient stones. In the center, 5 circles had been drawn in ash on the bare earth, forming a larger circle around a central fire. The 5 chosen wolves knelt within their circles, stripped to the waist, their skin painted with symbols in red ochre. Gregor stood at the edge of the grove, his face carved from stone. Through their bond, Ariana felt his tension, his fear for her, but also his grudging respect for her courage. She gave him a small nod as she passed, drawing strength from his presence. Thalia guided her to the central fire, where she knelt on a bed of furs. The ancient healer raised her hands, and the assembled wolves fell silent. "We gather beneath the watching moon," Talia began, her voice carrying surprising power for one so old, "to witness the rebirth of ancient ways. Our queen, marked by the Blackthorn blood, blessed with the power of the first wolves, offers her strength to these warriors that they might carry her light into battle." She turned to Ariana, handing her an obsidian knife with a bone handle carved in the shape of a wolf's head. "The offering must be freely given, the bond freely accepted. Blood calls to blood, power to power, life to life." Ariana took the knife, its weight solid and somehow comforting in her hand. She rose and approached the first warrior, Cassia, a female alpha from the eastern mountains, known for her speed and ferocity in battle. "Do you accept my mark?" Ariana asked, following the ritual words Talia had taught her. "Do you consent to carry my power, to channel my healing, to be bound to me in blood and magic until death releases you?" Cassia's eyes, amber gold in the firelight, met hers without fear. "I accept your mark, my queen. I consent to the bond in blood and magic from this night until my last." Ariana drew the knife across her own palm first, letting her blood well up golden in the firelight. Then she cut a matching line across Cassia's shoulder, where the mark would be most visible yet protected in battle. As their blood mingled, Ariana focused on the power within her, the wild, ancient force that had awakened at Starfall. She directed it into the connection forming between them, visualizing a thread of golden light binding her to the warrior. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Power surged from Ariana into Cassia, whose body arched as if struck by lightning. Golden light spread from the point where their blood touched, forming intricate patterns across the warrior's skin, not random, but deliberate, a language of magic written in light. Ariana felt the connection snap into place, a new awareness blossoming in her mind. She could sense Cassia's shock, her wonder, her fierce pride in being the first to bear the queen's mark. When it was done, Cassia slumped forward, breathing hard, but when she looked up, her eyes glowed with the same golden light that emanated from her new mark. She pressed a fist to her heart in silent oath. One by one, Ariana repeated the ritual with the other 4 warriors: Gareth, a massive wolf from the western forests; Kira and Donner, twins who had survived the purge of their pack years ago; and Varen, oldest of the 5 and a former rival of Gregor's, who had bent the knee after a legendary battle. Each bond formed differently, the marks adapting to the nature of the warrior who bore them. Each time, Ariana felt her power flow outward, creating a web of connections that she could sense like new limbs extending from her body. By the time she reached the last warrior, her hands were shaking with exhaustion, her vision blurring at the edges. The golden light that had blazed so brightly for the first bond was now a mere flicker. As she completed the final mark on Varen's weathered skin, Ariana swayed dangerously. "Enough!" Gregor's voice cut through her fading consciousness. Strong arms caught her as she fell, cradling her against a familiar chest. "It's done. You've done enough." Through the bond, she felt his fear warring with pride, his anger at the risk she had taken tempered by awe at what she had accomplished. The last thing Ariana saw before darkness claimed her was the 5 warriors rising to their feet, their new marks glowing like golden brands in the night, their eyes reflecting the same unearthly light. She had created something that hadn't existed in centuries. The Lifeblood Alliance was born. Ariana woke slowly, drifting through layers of exhaustion, before finally opening her eyes to find herself in her chambers at Crimson Citadel. Sunlight streamed through the windows, suggesting it was well past dawn. Her body felt leaden, drained in a way she hadn't experienced since the night Gregor marked her. But there was something else too, a new awareness humming at the edges of her consciousness. 5 distinct presences, like candles burning at different distances, each with its own unique signature. The bonds. They had worked. "Don't try to move yet," Gregor's voice came from nearby. He sat in a chair pulled close to her bed, dark circles beneath his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. "You've been unconscious for nearly a day." Ariana ignored his advice, pushing herself up against the pillows. "The warriors are fine." He moved to sit on the edge of the bed, helping her adjust to a more comfortable position. "Better than fine," according to Thalia. "The marks have taken hold more strongly than anyone expected. They've been testing the bonds since dawn." "I can feel them," Ariana murmured, focusing on the new connections. "Cassia is excited? Varen is concerned about something. Gareth is hungry." She looked up at Gregor in wonder. It worked exactly as the legends said it would. At what cost? Gregor's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "You pushed yourself to the brink of collapse, Ariana. Even now your power is dangerously low." "But it will return," she insisted. "I can already feel it rebuilding. And now we know it's possible. We can create more bonds, spread the network throughout our forces." Gregor's expression hardened. "No, not yet. You need to recover fully, and we need to understand exactly what these bonds mean before we expand them." Before Ariana could argue, a sharp knock came at the door. Tharkas entered without waiting for permission, his face grave. "Forgive the intrusion, Your Majesties, but you need to see this." He crossed to the window and threw open the shutters wider, gesturing toward the horizon. In the distance, a plume of black smoke rose against the clear blue sky. "Ashen Ridge," Tharkas said grimly. "The human armies have begun their march. They've burned the first wolf settlement on their path." Gregor was on his feet instantly, his body tense with barely contained rage. "How many casualties?" "Unknown. A handful of survivors made it to our outer posts at dawn. They speak of hundreds of soldiers moving through the valleys, burning everything in their path." "How long until they reach the citadel?" Ariana asked, forcing herself to think strategically despite the horror tightening her chest. 3 weeks at their current pace," Tharkas answered. "Less if they pick up speed." "Then we have 3 weeks to prepare." Gregor's voice was cold steel. "Send riders to every allied pack. It's time to call in every debt, every favor, every promise of aid. And tell the marked warriors to gather in the training yard. We need to see exactly what these new bonds can do." Tharkas nodded and departed, leaving Gregor and Ariana alone with the terrible reality of what was coming. "They've made their choice," Gregor said quietly, staring at the distant smoke. "Now blood will answer blood." "This isn't just about revenge." Ariana pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the weakness in her limbs. "It's about survival, about creating a future where our kind doesn't live in fear." Gregor turned to look at her, something fierce and proud in his eyes. "Then we'd better make sure we live to see that future." He extended his hand to her. "Can you walk? The people need to see their queen strong in this moment." Ariana took his hand, drawing on his strength and her own determination. "I can walk, and I can fight, and I will not let our people fall." Together they descended to the training yard, where the 5 marked warriors waited. As Ariana approached, she felt the bonds between them pulse with energy. The marks on their skin brightened in response to her presence, golden light spiraling across muscle and sinew. "My queen," Cassia stepped forward, dropping to one knee. The others followed suit, heads bowed in respect. "We await your command." Ariana studied them, feeling the changes in their auras. The bond had altered them subtly, enhancing their natural abilities. Cassia's reflexes were sharper. Gareth's already formidable strength had increased. The twins seemed to move in perfect unison, their thoughts aligned through their connection to Ariana. And Varen, the old warrior, stood straighter than he had in years, vigor returning to his weathered frame. "Rise," Ariana said. "We have much to learn and little time. The human armies have begun their march. War is coming, and we must be ready." For the next week, Ariana worked with the marked warriors from dawn until dusk, testing the limits of their new abilities. They discovered that not only could she channel healing through them to other wolves, but she could also boost their strength, speed, and endurance for short periods. The marked ones could communicate with each other through their bonds with her, a tactical advantage that would prove invaluable in battle. But the most significant discovery came accidentally when Donner was injured during a training session. As Ariana instinctively sent healing energy through their bond, she felt something unexpected, power flowing back to her, replenishing what she had given. The bonds weren't just channels through which she could give, they were conduits through which she could receive as well. "It's a circuit," Talia explained when Ariana described what had happened. "The old texts mention this, but I didn't think it possible in our age. Your healing doesn't just drain your own reserves, it draws strength from those you've marked, cycles it through you, and returns it enhanced." "So I won't burn out by healing too many?" Ariana asked, hope rising in her chest. "Not as long as the marked ones remain strong," Talia confirmed. "But be warned, if they falter, if too many are wounded or killed at once, the backlash could still be devastating." Armed with this knowledge, Ariana approached Gregor again, arguing for expanding the network of marked warriors. After witnessing the success of the first 5 bonds, he reluctantly agreed to allow 5 more. The ritual was performed 3 days after the first, and this time, Ariana emerged tired but conscious, her recovery much faster than before. As the human army continued its inexorable march toward Crimson Citadel, destroying every wolf settlement in its path, preparations for war consumed every waking moment. Gregor and Tharkas drilled their forces relentlessly, developing new tactics that incorporated the marked warriors and their unique abilities. Supplies were stockpiled, weapons forged and blessed, defenses reinforced. 2 weeks after the first smoke was sighted, scouts reported that the human army had swelled to over 30,000 soldiers. They had been joined by mercenaries, witch hunters, and even a contingent of warrior priests who claimed their god had ordained the extinction of wolfkind. At their head rode a figure in black armor, carrying a banner showing a sword piercing a wolf's heart, Magnus Ironblood, Prince of Ironspire and Dominic Raventhorn's true master. "They'll reach the valley within 5 days, Tharkas reported during a war council. "Their advance force has already begun clearing the forests for their siege engines." "Let them come." Gregor's voice was cold confidence. "The valley has been a graveyard for invaders before. We'll make it so again." But privately, when they were alone in their chambers that night, he confessed his fears to Ariana. 30,000 against our 3,000, he said, staring into the fire. "Even with your powers, even with the marked warriors, those aren't odds any commander would welcome." Ariana came to stand beside him, leaning against his solid warmth. "Then perhaps we need more than just the 10 marked ones." Gregor looked down at her, his expression troubled. "We agreed." "Circumstances have changed," she interrupted gently. "The enemy is at our gates with numbers beyond what we anticipated, and I've proven I can create the bonds safely." 10 is one thing, Gregor argued, but how many more are you suggesting? 50. The number hung in the air between them, audacious and terrifying. 50 bonds? Gregor shook his head in disbelief. "That would tax even the strongest first wolf, and you're still new to your powers, still learning your limits." "I've been working with Talia," Ariana persisted. "We've developed a modified ritual that would allow me to mark multiple warriors at once, reducing the strain on both sides. And with each bond I create, the network grows stronger, more stable." She took his hands in hers, willing him to understand. "This is our only chance, Gregor. If we face them with what we have now, we'll be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. But 50 marked warriors, strategically placed throughout our forces, could turn the tide. Gregor was silent for a long time, weighing her words against his fears. Finally, he met her eyes, silver to gold. "If I agree to this," he said slowly, "there will be conditions, non-negotiable." "Name them." "First, you will not create all 40 remaining bonds at once. 4 rituals, 10 warriors each, spread over 4 days." Ariana nodded. It was a reasonable precaution. "Second, if at any point Thalia determines the strain is becoming dangerous, we stop immediately. No arguments." Again she nodded. "And third," his voice softened, though his eyes remained intense, "you will promise me, swear to me on everything you hold sacred, that you will not sacrifice yourself in this war, that if the situation becomes hopeless, you will retreat, you will survive. The wolf race needs their golden queen, Ariana. I need you." The naked vulnerability in those last 3 words caught at her heart. Through their bond, she felt the depth of his fear, not for himself, not even primarily for his people, but for her. In the space of a few short weeks, she had become his reason for fighting, his hope for a future beyond endless war. "I promise," she whispered, knowing it was a vow she might not be able to keep. But it was what he needed to hear, what he needed to believe. Gregor seemed to sense her reservation. He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. "I mean it, Ariana. I've lived through loss before. I've survived the death of everyone I ever cared for. But losing you—" He shook his head, the words failing him. "You won't lose me," Ariana said with more confidence than she felt. "We're going to win this war, Gregor. Together." She rose on her toes to kiss him, sealing the promise with the press of her lips against his. That night, they came together with a desperate intensity, both aware of the shadow of war hanging over them. In Gregor's arms, Ariana found a temporary refuge from the fears that plagued her. The weight of responsibility, the terror of failure, the knowledge that thousands of lives depended on her untested powers. For a few precious hours, they were simply Ariana and Gregor, man and woman, lovers finding solace in each other's embrace. But as dawn approached, reality returned. The next 4 days would be crucial. The marking rituals, the final preparations for battle, the positioning of their forces. And then the human army would arrive, and their fate would be decided in blood and steel and magic. As the first light of morning touched the mountains, Ariana stood at the window, watching the awakening citadel below. Wolves in both human and animal form moved through the courtyards, preparing for war with grim determination. They were outnumbered, outmatched in conventional terms. But they had something the human armies couldn't understand or anticipate: the rebirth of ancient magic, the power of the first wolves flowing once more through their veins. Behind her, Gregor stirred in their bed, reaching for her automatically. His silver eyes found hers across the room, reading the resolve in her posture. "It begins today," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. Ariana nodded, turning to face the dawn. "Today, we remake the world, or die trying." Dawn broke over the Valley of Crimson, painting the world in shades of amber and blood. Ariana stood on the battlements of the citadel, her gaze fixed on the enemy encampment spread across the valley floor. 50,000 torches had burned through the night, each representing a soldier ready to eradicate her kind from existence. The tactical disparity was stark: 50,000 against 3,000. Numbers that had seemed impossible when first reported, now an undeniable reality stretched before them. "The siege engines are in position." Gregor's voice came from behind her, his tone measured despite the gravity of their situation. Unlike his warriors who would fight as wolves, he wore ceremonial battle armor of blackened steel inlaid with silver runes, a king facing his enemy with dignity before unleashing the beast within. "Magnus has completed his deployment," Ariana observed, noting the precise formations. "He's arranged his forces in the Falchion pattern, heavy infantry at center, archers and cavalry on the flanks. Classic Iron Spire tactics." Gregor raised an eyebrow, impressed by her strategic assessment. Over the past weeks, while establishing bonds with her marked warriors, Ariana had immersed herself in military history, studying the tactics of both wolves and humans. No longer merely a healer, she had become a strategist in her own right. "The marked warriors are in position?" he asked. Ariana closed her eyes briefly, feeling the complex network of connections humming in her consciousness. 50 distinct signatures, each positioned strategically throughout their forces, each carrying a portion of her power within them. "Yes," she confirmed, "but there's something you should know." Gregor turned to her, reading the concern in her expression. "What is it?" "I've been working with Talia on a new application of the network." Ariana met his eyes directly. "Not just healing, not just strength enhancement. We've discovered I can use the network as a form of shared consciousness in battle, allowing our forces to coordinate without verbal commands, to anticipate threats before they manifest." "A hive mind?" Gregor frowned. "That sounds dangerous, Ariana. The strain on you—" "Will be managed," she interrupted firmly. "Thalia and I have developed a technique using crystal resonators placed at key positions around the battlefield. They'll amplify and stabilize the network, preventing the backlash that might occur if a warrior falls." This was their first genuine strategic disagreement. Not about her safety, they'd moved beyond that particular conflict, but about battlefield tactics. Ariana watched Gregor process this new information, weighing risks against advantages as a commander rather than a protective mate. "You've tested this?" he finally asked. "Extensively, with the first 10 marked warriors." She nodded toward the valley. "It could mean the difference between defeat and victory today. Magnus has numbers, but we'll have perfect coordination." Gregor studied her face, noting the confidence there, not the desperate bravado of someone willing to sacrifice themselves, but the measured certainty of a tactician who had thoroughly assessed the variables. "Show me," he said. Ariana placed her hand on his arm and, through their bond, gave him a glimpse of what she'd created. The intricate web of connections flowing through their forces, anchored by the crystal resonators hidden at strategic points throughout the valley. Each marked warrior a node in the network, each regular wolf connected through proximity. Not a true hive mind, but a battlefield awareness that would allow instantaneous coordination. "Impressive," Gregor acknowledged, genuine respect in his voice. "You continue to surprise me, my queen." Before she could respond, the warning horns blared, a single, sustained note echoing across the valley. The human army was advancing. "It's time," Gregor said, drawing his sword. An ancient blade passed down through generations of blackthorn kings, its edge enchanted to cut through the strongest armor. "Remember the strategy. We engage their vanguard, draw them into the valley's narrowest point, then strike from all sides. Your network will be crucial for coordinating the flanking movements." "And Magnus?" Ariana asked. "Leave him to me," Gregor's voice hardened. "Once their formations break, I'll take Tharkus and the elite guard straight for his command position. Cut the head from the snake and the body dies." Ariana nodded, though something in her expression remained troubled. Through their bond, Gregor sensed her concern. "What is it?" he asked. "There's more to Magnus than we know," she said quietly. "Raventhorn wasn't just following orders. He was devoted to Magnus, fanatically so. In his memories, I glimpsed something strange about their relationship. Magnus has some power of his own, something that inspires not just loyalty, but obsession in his followers." "All the more reason to end him quickly," Gregor replied, though he filed this information away carefully. "Come, our forces await." They descended to the main courtyard where their army had gathered, 3,000 wolves in light armor that would transform with them when they shifted. The marked warriors were easily identifiable by the golden light that emanated from the symbols on their skin, a visible manifestation of their connection to Ariana. As the king and queen appeared, a hush fell over the assembled warriors. Gregor stepped forward, his presence commanding attention without effort. "For 15 years I have ruled Nighthaven through strength and terror," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "I was the Winter King, cold and merciless. I believed this made me powerful." He turned to Ariana, something softening in his expression. "I was wrong." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. The Winter King never admitted error, never showed vulnerability. "True power comes not from dominance, but from unity," Gregor continued, "from bonds freely given and accepted, from fighting not just for ourselves, but for each other." He looked back at his forces, his gaze sweeping over faces turned toward him in rapt attention. "Today, we are not just individual wolves defending our territory. We are a pack, united by bonds stronger than blood, stronger than fear. We are the descendants of the first ones, and today," His eyes flashed silver, then gold as his wolf rose close to the surface. Today we show the humans what that truly means. A roar erupted from 3,000 throats, some human, some already transforming into bestial howls. Through the network, Ariana felt their courage, their determination, their absolute faith in their king and queen. She channeled a wave of strength back to them, not just healing, but confidence, clarity, resolve. Gregor raised his sword, the signal to move out. "For Nighthaven, for the future, for the Queen!" The response thundered back, a battle cry none had planned, but all embraced. As the forces began moving toward the massive gates, Thalia approached Ariana. The ancient healer pressed something into her hand, a small crystal pendant, identical to the resonators placed throughout the battlefield, but miniaturized. "Keep this with you," she instructed. "It will help stabilize your connection to the network, especially if—" She didn't finish the thought, but Ariana understood. If things went wrong, if warriors began to fall, if the backlash threatened to overwhelm her. "I'll be careful," Ariana promised, slipping the pendant around her neck. She felt it immediately, a subtle resonance with the larger crystals, creating a feedback loop that would help manage the energy flow. Gregor appeared at her side, his expression unreadable to most. But through their bond, she felt his mix of pride, determination, and carefully controlled fear. Not for himself, but for her, for their people, for the future they hoped to build. "Ready?" he asked simply. Ariana nodded, squaring her shoulders. Together, they walked through the great gates of Crimson Citadel and descended toward the valley below, where 50,000 enemies awaited their coming. The human army was an impressive sight, stretching across the valley floor in formations so precise they seemed drawn by a mathematician's hand. Row upon row of soldiers in gleaming armor, siege engines looming behind them, banners snapping in the morning breeze, all unified by a single purpose, the eradication of wolfkind. At the army's center, mounted on a massive black stallion, sat Prince Magnus Ironblood. Even from a distance, his presence was commanding. Unlike Dominic Raventhorn, who had hidden his true nature behind a mask of diplomacy, Magnus made no attempt to conceal his hatred. His armor was forged from a black metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, etched with silver runes designed to repel wolf magic. A crown of iron spikes circled his helm, and the banner of the pierced wolf heart flew from a standard carried by his honor guard. But there was something else about him, something Ariana could sense even across the battlefield, an aura of power that didn't feel entirely human. Not wolf magic, but something older, darker, with a resonance that made her skin prickle. "Do you feel that?" she murmured to Gregor. "Yes," he replied, his eyes narrowing. "Whatever he is, he's more than just a human prince." The wolves of Nighthaven took position along the lower slopes of the valley, forming a wide arc that would allow them to attack from multiple directions. The 50 marked warriors, their skin glowing with golden light, were spaced evenly throughout the formation, each responsible for a section of their forces. Through the network, Ariana felt their collective focus, their readiness. The crystal resonators hummed with power, strengthening the connections, creating a battlefield awareness unlike anything the wolves had ever experienced. Every warrior knew exactly where their allies were, could sense threats before they materialized, could coordinate without verbal commands. For a long moment, silence held the valley in its grip. Then a single horn blast echoed across the space, the human signal to advance. "Here they come," Gregor murmured, drawing his sword. "Remember, we draw them in, then strike from all sides." The human forces moved forward in a disciplined wave, their steps eerily synchronized. When they reached the midpoint of the valley, another horn blast sounded. The front lines suddenly parted, revealing ranks of archers who had been concealed behind them. "Shields!" Gregor's command rang out, and the warning rippled through the network faster than sound could travel. 1,000 arrows arced into the sky, their tips gleaming with a sickly green substance. Wolf's bane. The poisoned shafts rained down on the wolf forces, but this time they were ready. Warriors raised shields, moved to cover, or simply dodged with preternatural speed, anticipating the attack through the network's shared awareness. Those few who were struck immediately received healing through their nearest marked warrior, the poison neutralized before it could take effect. It was a testament to Ariana's training with the network, to the hours spent teaching the marked warriors to channel her power efficiently, focusing it where needed most. Magnus hadn't expected this. Through the network, Ariana sensed the confusion among the human commanders as their first assault failed to produce the expected casualties, but they adapted quickly. Another horn blast, and their main forces charged forward, weapons drawn. The battle joined in earnest then, a chaos of steel and claw, of human war cries and wolf howls. Ariana lost sight of Gregor as he led the center forces directly toward Magnus's position. She found herself surrounded by human soldiers, their faces twisted with fear and hatred as they recognized the Queen from Raventhorn's descriptions. Ariana fought with a grace and precision that would have been impossible weeks ago. Since discovering her ability to shift into wolf form, she had trained relentlessly, spending hours each day with Nighthaven's best warriors, learning to combine her human combat skills with her wolf's natural abilities. Her twin daggers, forged from a rare metal that maintained its edge even against enchanted armor, became extensions of her body, finding gaps in defenses, severing tendons, opening arteries in swift, precise strikes. When the press became too tight for blades, she shifted seamlessly into wolf form, her white coat with golden markings making her a beacon on the battlefield. Through the network, she continued to coordinate their forces, directing the marked warriors to where they were needed most, sensing weaknesses in the enemy lines, exploiting opportunities as they arose. The humans had expected the wolves to fall to poison, to silver, to specially crafted weapons. They hadn't prepared for an enemy that could heal faster than they could wound, that knew their tactics before they executed them, that moved with unnatural coordination across the battlefield. But numbers still told. For every human soldier that fell, 3 more took his place. The wolves fought with supernatural strength and speed, but even they tired eventually. And Magnus, observing from his command position, was not idle. He began directing targeted attacks against the marked warriors, recognizing them as key nodes in the wolves' strategy. The first marked warrior fell to a coordinated assault by 10 elite soldiers. Gareth, one of the original 5, overwhelmed despite his enormous strength. The bond between him and Ariana snapped, but instead of the devastating backlash she had feared, the crystal resonators absorbed most of the energy spike, redistributing it through the network. Ariana felt Gareth's death as a distant echo, a moment of loss rather than crippling pain. Through the network, she sent a silent farewell to the fallen warrior, then redirected her focus to the battle. 3 more marked ones fell in quick succession, each loss absorbed by the crystal system, each death honored but not allowed to compromise their strategy. The tide of battle ebbed and flowed across the valley. In some areas, the wolves gained ground, their superior speed and coordination allowing them to outflank human formations. In others, sheer numbers forced them back, the endless waves of soldiers overwhelming even their enhanced abilities. Through it all, Ariana maintained the network. Her consciousness spread across the battlefield like a living map. She sensed Gregor's progress toward Magnus, slow but steady, cutting through the prince's elite guard with grim determination. Tharkus fought at his side, the old warrior's experience complementing his king's raw power. Then something changed. Through the network, Ariana felt a surge of dark energy from Magnus's position. Power unlike anything she'd sensed before, ancient and malevolent. She shifted her attention there just in time to see the prince raise a staff that hadn't been visible before, a twisted length of black wood topped with a crystal that pulsed with sickly light. "Gregor!" Her warning flashed through their bond, but it came too late. Magnus brought the staff down, and a wave of energy exploded outward. Where it touched the ground, the earth blackened and cracked. Where it touched wolves, they fell, not dead but paralyzed, their bodies locked in unnatural positions. And where it touched the crystal resonators, they shattered, their fragments turning to dust. The network destabilized immediately, connections flickering as the carefully balanced system collapsed. Ariana gasped at the sudden strain, feeling the full weight of 45 remaining bonds pulling at her consciousness without the resonators to buffer the flow. What was that? Cassia appeared at her side, one of the few marked warriors who had managed to make her way to her queen when the crystals failed. "Old magic," Ariana replied, her voice strained. "Very old. Magnus isn't just a human prince, he's a sorcerer, and that staff, it's channeling power from somewhere else, something that hates wolves. Through their now fragmented connection, she sought Gregor, finding him surrounded by Magnus's guard, cut off from Tharkus and the others who had accompanied him. He was fighting ferociously, but with each passing moment, more of Magnus's power seeped into the battlefield, weakening the wolves, strengthening their enemies. Ariana made her decision instantly. "Gather as many marked warriors as you can," she ordered Cassia. "We need to reach Magnus directly. That staff is the key. If we can destroy it, his magic fails." Cassia nodded and moved swiftly, using the remnants of the network to coordinate with the nearest marked ones. Within minutes, Ariana had a force of 15 elite warriors at her command, all that could be spared from the increasingly desperate battle. "We cut straight through to Magnus's position," she instructed. "Don't engage unless necessary. Our target is the staff, nothing else." They moved as one, a wedge of golden-marked wolves tearing through the human lines with single-minded purpose. Ariana at their center, alternating between human and wolf form as needed, her daggers flashing or her teeth tearing as the situation demanded. Through their bond, she felt Gregor's recognition of her plan, his approval mingled with concern. He redoubled his own efforts, drawing Magnus's attention to create the opening she needed. They were halfway to the command position when the dark wave came again, stronger this time, more focused. 3 marked warriors collapsed instantly, their connections to Ariana severing with violent force. Without the resonators to buffer the backlash, the pain hit her directly, sending her stumbling to her knees. "My queen!" Cassia was at her side instantly, helping her back to her feet. "I'm fine," Ariana gasped, though the world spun around her. "We keep moving." Through the chaos, she caught glimpses of the larger battle. The wolves were being pushed back on all fronts, Magnus's dark magic giving the humans an advantage that even the network couldn't counter. If they didn't reach him soon, all would be lost. Then, through their bond, she felt Gregor's triumph. He had broken through the last of Magnus's guard, reaching the prince himself. But with that triumph came sudden, searing pain as Magnus turned his attention fully on the Wolf King. The sorcerer prince raised his staff, and a beam of concentrated darkness struck Gregor directly. Through their bond, Ariana felt the agony as if it were her own, every nerve aflame, every muscle locked in spasm, his very soul seeming to tear at the seams. "Gregor!" Her scream was both vocal and mental, echoing through what remained of the network. In that moment of shared agony, something new awakened in Ariana. Not the healing power she had relied on, not the strategic network she had built, but something deeper and more primal. The true heritage of the first wolves, those who had walked with gods when the world was young. Golden light erupted from her body, so bright it momentarily blinded those around her. But this wasn't her healing light. This was something older, wilder, more fundamental. The light of creation itself, of life in its purest form. "Get back!" she ordered the marked warriors, her voice carrying harmonics no human throat should produce. "All of you, fall back now." They obeyed instantly, recognizing the power gathering around their queen. Ariana stood alone, the golden light spreading outward from her in pulsing waves. Where it touched the darkened earth, grass sprouted through the cracks. Where it touched fallen wolves, they stirred, their paralysis broken. And where it touched the human soldiers, they stopped, weapons lowering as they stared in wonder and fear at the glowing figure in their midst. Magnus sensed the threat immediately. He turned from Gregor, who lay gasping on the ground, and focused his staff on Ariana. The black beam lashed out, striking her golden aura, only to shatter against it like glass hitting stone. "What are you?" The prince's voice carried across the suddenly silent battlefield, rage and fear mingling in equal measure. Ariana walked forward, each step leaving a footprint of blooming flowers in the blackened earth. The golden light continued to pour from her, growing stronger with each movement. "I am Ariana Shadowcrest," she replied, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the valley. "Last daughter of the Ember Mist bloodline, mate to the Winter King, descendant of the first wolves who walked with the creators of this world." She continued her advance, unstoppable as the dawn. "But more than that, I am what you fear most, Magnus Ironblood, or should I call you by your true name, the name your master gave you when you pledged yourself to the void." Magnus recoiled as if struck. "How could you possibly—" "I see you," Ariana said simply. "All of you. The scared boy who found an ancient text, the ambitious prince who made a bargain he didn't understand, the puppet who thinks himself the master." She was within 20 paces of him now, and Magnus's composure shattered. He raised the staff with both hands, channeling everything he had into one desperate attack. Darkness exploded from the crystal tip, a concentrated beam of pure negation aimed at Ariana's heart. She didn't dodge, didn't flinch. The darkness struck her directly and disappeared, absorbed into her golden aura like water into sand. "Impossible," Magnus breathed. "No," Ariana corrected, now close enough that she could see the terror in his eyes. "Inevitable." She reached out, not to attack but to touch, placing her glowing hand on the staff itself. The twisted black wood shuddered at her contact, the crystal at its tip flaring with sickly light as two ancient magics contested for dominance. For a moment, they stood locked together, Ariana and Magnus, life and void, creation and destruction. The battlefield around them held its breath, wolves and humans alike frozen in witness to powers beyond their comprehension. Then, with a sound like the world sighing, the staff's crystal cracked. Darkness poured from the fracture, trying to escape, to find a new vessel. But Ariana's golden light pursued it, surrounding the fleeing shadows, compressing them until they had nowhere left to run. With a final, silent implosion, the darkness vanished. The staff crumbled to dust in Magnus's hands, and the prince himself collapsed to his knees, suddenly looking much younger, much more human, without the power that had sustained him. "What have you done to me?" he gasped, his voice no longer carrying the supernatural resonance it had before. "Freed you," Ariana answered simply, "though you may not thank me for it." She turned from him, her attention immediately seeking Gregor. He had risen to his feet, weakened but alive, his silver eyes finding hers across the distance with a mixture of awe and relief. Around them, the battlefield had gone completely still. Human soldiers stood with weapons lowered, the malevolent influence that had fueled their hatred suddenly gone. Wolves watched in wary confusion, uncertain if the battle was truly over. "It's finished," Ariana said, her voice carrying to every corner of the valley. "The power that drove us to this war is broken. The staff Magnus wielded was an artifact of the void, an ancient enemy of all living things. It fed on hatred, on fear, on the desire to dominate and destroy." She moved to Gregor's side, taking his hand in hers, their united presence a symbol to both armies. For centuries, it has worked through human kingdoms, turning them against wolfkind, feeding on the conflict it created. Today, that cycle ends. Across the battlefield, humans and wolves looked at each other with new eyes. The artificial hatred that had driven them suddenly lifted like a fog clearing after dawn. Confusion reigned, but with it came the first tentative seeds of understanding. Magnus remained on his knees, staring at his empty hands. "I thought I was the master," he said, his voice hollow. "I thought the power was mine to control, but it was using me all along, wasn't it?" "Yes," Ariana confirmed, no condemnation in her voice, "as it used your father before you and his father before him. The Iron bloodline has been its vessel for 7 generations, each king believing he commanded the power, each unknowingly serving the void's purpose. What happens now?" It was Tharkus who asked the question, appearing at Gregor's other side, bloodied but unbowed. "Now we build something new," Gregor answered, his arm encircling Ariana's waist, drawing strength from her presence. "Something that hasn't existed since the old kingdom fell. A world where wolves and humans remember they are kin beneath the skin, not enemies to be destroyed." "It won't be easy," Ariana cautioned, looking out at the mixed forces who were already beginning to separate, instinct and centuries of conditioning pulling them back to their respective sides. The void's influence ran deep, and even with its power broken, the memories of hatred remain. "Then we start small," Gregor decided, "a council of both kinds. Treaties of mutual protection rather than subjugation, trade between our peoples, and time for wounds to heal, for trust to grow." Magnus rose shakily to his feet, his once imposing figure now merely that of a young man overwhelmed by events beyond his control. "And what of me? What punishment does the Wolf King decree for the one who led an army against his kingdom?" Gregor studied him for a long moment, weighing justice against mercy. "You will return to Iron Spire," he he finally said. "You will rule as its prince, but with a wolf ambassador at your court and human hostages in mine, noble children who will learn our ways as we learn yours. You will work to undo the damage your line has caused, to build bridges where once you raised walls." He stepped closer to Magnus, his voice dropping so that only the prince and Ariana could hear. "And if you ever again raise arms against my people, against my mate, I will not be so merciful. Remember that you live by her grace, not mine. I would have taken your head without hesitation." Magnus bowed his head in acceptance, understanding the weight of the debt he now carried. When he straightened, some of his dignity had returned, not the false pride of the Void's puppet, but something more human, more genuine. "I will honor this chance," he said simply, "and work to be worthy of it." As word of what had transpired spread across the battlefield, an uneasy peace settled over the valley. Humans and wolves withdrew to opposite sides, maintaining wary distance but no longer actively seeking each other's destruction. Healers from both sides moved among the wounded, tentatively at first, then with growing cooperation as they realized their skills complemented each other. Ariana's golden light had faded to a gentle glow, but its effects remained. Everywhere it had touched, life flourished. Grass pushing through barren soil, flowers blooming out of season, wounds healing with unnatural speed. The valley itself seemed to be waking from a long nightmare, shaking off the darkness that had seeped into its very foundations. That night, as torches burned on both sides of the valley, Ariana and Gregor stood on the battlements of Crimson Citadel, watching the two encampments, one human, one wolf, that had been mortal enemies that morning. "Do you think it will last?" Ariana asked, leaning against Gregor's solid warmth. "This fragile peace we've built?" "I don't know," he admitted, his arm tightening around her. "The Void's influence ran deep, as you said. Its darkness fed on the natural tensions between our kinds for generations. There will be setbacks, conflicts, times when it seems easier to return to the old ways of hatred and separation. But," she looked up at him, sensing there was more, "but I've seen what's possible now." Gregor turned to face her fully, his silver eyes reflecting the torchlight. "I've seen wolves and humans working together to save lives today. I've seen what happens when ancient powers are confronted not with more darkness, but with light, with life." His hand cupped her cheek. "With love." Ariana smiled, leaning into his touch. "When did the Winter King become such an optimist?" "When a stubborn witch from Embermist agreed to marry him to save her village," Gregor replied, a rare smile transforming his face, "and proceeded to turn his world upside down in every way possible." He bent to kiss her, a tender meeting of lips that carried all the emotion words couldn't express: relief at their survival, pride in what they had accomplished, hope for the future they might build, and beneath it all, the deep, unshakable love that had grown between them against all odds. When they broke apart, Gregor rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever comes next," he murmured, "we face it together." "Together," Ariana agreed, the word a promise and a prayer. "Always together." 10 years later, spring had come early to Crimson Valley, coating the once barren battlefield in a riot of wildflowers and fresh green grass. The citadel itself had transformed over the decade, its grim fortress walls now softened by climbing vines and flowering trees, its courtyards opened to allow sunlight where once there had been only shadow. Ariana stood on her favorite balcony, watching the activity in the valley below. Where once there had been only wolf dwellings clustered protectively around the citadel, now a thriving town spread outward, homes and workshops inhabited by both species, living side by side in a peace that had seemed impossible 10 years ago. It hadn't been easy. The first 2 years especially had seen violence flare repeatedly as old hatreds resurfaced, as families who had lost loved ones sought revenge, as skeptics on both sides worked to undermine the fragile alliance. But with each setback, each conflict resolved through dialogue rather than bloodshed, the foundations of trust grew stronger. The Wolfwood Accords, signed 5 years after the Battle of Crimson Valley, had formalized the peace between the Northern Territories and the human kingdoms. Trade flourished, cultural exchange bloomed. Children were born who knew the other species not as enemies, but as neighbors, partners, friends. "Deep thoughts?" Gregor's voice came from behind her, followed by his arms wrapping around her waist. His chin rested on top of her head, a familiar comfort. Grateful ones, Ariana corrected, leaning back against him. 10 years ago today, we faced extinction. Now look at what we've built. What you built, Gregor amended. None of this would exist without you, without what you showed both our kinds that day. Ariana turned in his arms to face him. A decade had left its marks on them both, but especially on Gregor. The perpetual coldness that had earned him the title Winter King had melted away, replaced by a quiet strength that commanded respect without inspiring fear. Silver threaded his dark hair at the temples now, matching his eyes that had never lost their intensity when they looked at her. "We built it together," she insisted. "All of us. Mother, father." The call came from inside their chambers. A moment later, their eldest child burst onto the balcony. Aaliyah, 9 years old, and already showing signs of both her parents' gifts. Her eyes, silver like her father's, gleamed with excitement. "Uncle Magnus has arrived with the southern delegation." Behind her came their younger son, Rowan, named after Ariana's grandfather, who had lived just long enough to meet his great-granddaughter. At 5, he was more reserved than his sister, but no less determined. The golden flecks in his otherwise silver eyes marked him as special even among the unique children of the first blood. "Tell Tharkus we'll be down shortly," Gregor instructed, ruffling his son's dark hair affectionately. As the children raced off, Ariana felt a familiar warmth in her chest. Not just love for her family, but the subtle resonance of the network that still connected her to the marked warriors throughout the territories. It had evolved over the years from a tactical tool to something deeper, a pack sense that united their people in ways not seen since the days of legend. "Magnus has been surprisingly reliable," Gregor observed, a hint of his old cynicism surfacing. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed he'd become one of our strongest allies." "People change when given the chance," Ariana reminded him. "When freed from influences, they don't even realize are controlling them." Gregor smiled, the expression still transforming his face in a way that made her heart skip. "As I have reason to know better than most." He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm, where a thin silver scar still marked the place their blood had first mingled. "Shall we go greet our guests, my queen? The future awaits." Hand in hand, they turned from the balcony toward the great hall, where representatives of all the allied territories, wolf and human alike, gathered to continue building the peace they had fought so hard to establish. The Winter King and his Golden Queen, united by a bond that had changed the world and each other forever.